they are subjecting themselves to liability, even though they think, oh, well, it wasn't prohibited expressly. They have to understand, and they have to have been brought up the proper way to know this is the right thing to do and this is not the right thing to do. So I agree with this idea about the most important thing is not always making the most profits on your revenues that you're generating all the time. Buffett says about the big mistake he made is not investing in Amazon. Bezos, not investing with him. And because here's a guy who thinks about his customer all the time, Chuck Schwab, he always thinks about his business, looking at his business from the customer's viewpoint, from the way their customer sees the business, acting ethically all the time. So I think that's very important.
Hey, Ron, we want to thank you for your time. We could talk to you for hours, and we hope you'll come back on the set, and we'll have an opportunity to do that. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of summer, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. We come back. Former Minneapolis Fed President Narayana Kocherlakota is going to join us. Squawk Box returns right after this. Right after this.
Introducing Nutrisystem's back-to-school sale. Save 50%. Yes, 50%.
Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches in your first month. Order your 28-day plan and get 1 week of high-protein shakes with probiotics to help shrink your belly free. Save 50%. Good on every plan until you reach your weight loss goals.
Call or go online right now.
Go online or call 888-867-FIT9 right now to save 50%. Plus get probiotic shakes free.
Introducing Nutrisystem's back-to-school sale.
Ready or not, here I come. You can't hide. I'm gonna find you and take it slowly. Ready or not, here I come.
Music that moves you. Just one part of the best cardio machine on the planet, Peloton.
Here I come. You can't hide.
Guys, how frustrating is it to find a great pair of jeans? Too tight here, too loose there, too long there? Standard jeans use just 2 measurements, and Tailor Custom Jeans use 7 different measurements to give you the perfect fit. Your phone can measure you right now. Download the M-Tailor app on iOS or Android. Choose from hundreds of styles. M-Tailor measures you digitally and is 20% more accurate than a professional tailor. With free shipping and a money-back guarantee, get your new favorite pair of jeans today. M-Tailor, available on the Apple App Store or Android.
Exploring the heart of historic Europe with Viking, you'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local life and legendary treasures as you sail on board our patented, award-winning Viking longships. You'll enjoy many extras, including Wi-Fi, cultural enrichment from ship to shore, and engaging excursions. Viking, voted #1 river cruise line by Condé Nast readers. Learn more at vikingrivercruises.com.
Retail stocks making big waves this morning. We've already seen results from Home Depot and Kohl's. Next up this hour, TJX.
Trump versus Powell. The president pummels his own central bank chief and calls for extreme rate cuts. We'll ask former Minneapolis Fed President Narayana Kocherlakota what this means for markets and investors.
And a Squawk Newsmaker, this hour, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins us live to talk about the U.S.-China trade war, a possible ban on Huawei, and tensions in Hong Kong. As the final hour of Squawk Box begins right now.
Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Major Ross Sorkin along with Becky Quick and Joe Kernan. Take a look at the futures this morning. We are in the green, but only marginally. The Dow up about 14 points right now. S&P 500 looking to open about 2.5 points higher, maybe 3 points right now. NASDAQ about 11 points higher. And most importantly, let's show you Treasury yields and where they stand at this hour. The 10-year note at 1.576. The 2-year note you're looking there is 1.527.
Let's get you caught up on some of the stories investors are going to be talking about today. Two big quarterly reports out from retailers this morning. Dow Component Home Depot posting earnings that came in above consensus for its second quarter. However, comp store sales fell below what the street was expecting, and Home Depot cut its full-year forecast. It noted the big reason for the miss was that lumber prices have decreased, and that's hurt their sales, also hurt their comps. Didn't do so much on profit, wasn't as much of a big problem there, but they did say that they could see some consumer weakness if new tariffs are put in place. Right now, though, that stock is up by 2%. Wall Street kind of brushing off some of these concerns and maybe thinking that the company's being a little conservative here. Last trade's at $212.06. Also, Kohl's out with second quarter earnings as well, the company beating street estimates on the bottom line, but it missed on the top line. Kohl's also posted a same-store sales decline that was worse than what analysts had expected. Still, that stock is up by 4.33% this morning. And amid concerns that a recession could be on the horizon, a White House official is denying a Washington Post report that said the Trump administration is considering a payroll tax cut. The official told CNBC more tax cuts for the American people are certainly on the table, but cutting payroll taxes is not something under consideration at this time.
President Trump is lashing out at Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell once again ahead of the Fed symposium in Jackson Hole later this week. In a series of tweets, the president said that while the U.S. economy is strong, Powell and the Fed are suffering from a horrendous lack of vision, in the president's words. Trump also said the Fed funds rate should be quickly dropped by at least 100 basis points. Join us now for more. Former Minneapolis Fed President Narayana Kocherlakota. He's currently an economics professor at the University of Rochester. It's great to see you, President Kocherlakota. Do you agree with the president in both the substance of what he's saying? Do you also agree with the tone and the very public way that he criticizes the Fed, or maybe you can agree partially with one and partially with the other? And I mean, where are you on that? He's very outspoken. Is he right about what he's saying, though?
So thanks for having me on. I agree with the president on the economics. I think maybe not the 100 basis points specifically that he mentioned yesterday, but in general, I think the Fed has been too tight. You can see that in the inflation numbers. Inflation remains low. Inflation expectations remain low, below the Fed's target of 2%. So I think you can see that monetary policy has been too tight, and so that calls for more easing than we've seen in the past. And I expect more easing to be coming down the pike in the rest of 2019. I think the president's role, though, as the president of the United States, is not to be as out there criticizing the Fed. I think that can lead to doubts about the Fed's credibility going forward. It's not so much of a problem right now because inflation remains low, but I think that this opens up the possibility that presidents in the future, including President Trump, might be critical of the Fed about being too tight when actually there are inflationary pressures. And that's what we mean by lack of credibility, is that the Fed will lose its ability to fight inflation because people think monetary policy is being run out of the White House at the behest of short-term electoral pressures.
You think the Fed has been too tight for 10 years, and that's just so out of the consensus thinking because most people think that the beggar thy neighbor global policies of central bankers of easy money, they think that it really the opposite of what you're saying, that we've been way too easy for 10 years, and that's part of the problem.
I just judge by outcomes. We had high unemployment for far too long. Unemployment now, thankfully, is quite low. We've had low inflation. Inflation below the Fed's target of 2% for a very long time. There was maybe a slight blip upwards in 2011 that took us above 2, but by and large, over the last 10 years, we've been below 2%. And you look at the Fed's own the way they make policy, the kinds of forecasts they offer for inflation, for example. They've been willing to tolerate low inflation for over very long periods of time, even in their outlooks. And so, yeah, I think I would stick to my claim. Monetary policy has been too tight for a very long period.
Professor, can you just explain sort of when you're in the room how the conversation around something like tariffs would manifest itself? and how that would, and to the extent that effectively the Fed has to predict or at least make some kind of bets on what may or may not happen, how that works?
Yeah, this, obviously I'm not in the room now, and so I don't know how the conversation is proceeding about tariffs in particular. But, for when I was there, we were very uncertain about fiscal policy, about when certain kinds of tax cuts would take place, or whether or not Congress would cut spending. And the way you view it as we in economics like to use this word exogenous. What does that mean? It means things that are outside your control. And so tariffs, the tariff policy that the president is pursuing is yet one among many things that are outside the Fed's control that are going to have important consequences for the economy. Different people around the table, I'm sure, have different outlooks about how the tariff policy will unfold. And that's going to affect their outlook, and that will affect as well about their feelings about monetary policy. If they think those tariffs are going to have a big downward impact on the U.S. economy, you're going to be in favor of more easing.
Right. Okay. There are two things that critics of being too easy that they would bring up, Professor. One is that there's malinvestment, that there should be a cost of money. There should be, if you allow people to have money for free or even pay them to take it, that they're going to go and invest it in things where they lose their money. They're not going to get a return, and then we'll have the same kind of problem we had during the financial crisis in the housing market. The other one is that when we do have a serious break in global economic activity, we got no dry powder. We've got 6 total cuts unless we go negative, and those both sound reasonable. And how do you get around not worrying about either one of those two things?
So on the investment front, if we are really, there are two ways people talk about malinvestment that I'm aware of. One is that we're investing in the wrong things, and the price of money, the price of credit at which you can get money, shouldn't affect whether or not you think one project is better than another. If a project's paying a higher return than another project, you should take that easy money and invest in the higher return project. That's the good thing. Now, the other thing people would say is, we have too much investment going on. And I guess when I look at the investment numbers, it's hard for me to understand what
it could be in emerging markets. It could be empty buildings in China. I mean, there could be a lot of places where you could see it, where we don't even know if it ever comes home to roost. But if no one's living in any of the buildings,
Chinese. I think it's. I'm not going to blame the Fed or central banks around the world
for emerging markets
for China's policies. So I'm sorry. What was the other?
The other one was we have no ammo. Powder. Next time, it used to be we could have 30 quarter-point cuts. What do we got now? We got what do we have in the tank?
So the way the Fed and myself think about stimulus when the recession comes along is it really matters in terms of what the interest rate you're trying to hit at that time looks like. And I think the problem that we're facing right now is that interest rates on the whole are typically going to be low, as we've seen. And so the interest rate we have to maintain to get to 2% inflation is low, or hit full employment is low. And so that means that when a recessionary shock comes along, we really want to have, as you're saying, a much lower interest rate. But that's not, if we raised interest rates now, we'd be just choking off the economy now. We'd have higher unemployment, even lower inflation, and things would be even worse if a recession came along. So that it's not about the rate of change in interest rates. It's always about the level of interest rates that matters.
Do you have any worries at all about just the global debasing of fiat currencies at all? Does that worry you at all as we rush to the bottom, or is it just what the current? I mean, we've got 17 trillion in negative rates. It just seems like something's amiss, and maybe I just hope it's not the pushing on a string that we're in the last throes of being able to keep this thing aloft before we hit stall speed.
So I am really, Joe, I'm very worried, and what I'm worried about though is I think something different from what you're worried about, which is. I think the concern that you see in bond markets about the future is really tied to the lack of policy capacity that we have in central banks, that we're going to see these downside shocks and central banks and the fiscal authorities are not going to be able to respond effectively. And that's going to lead to another recession of perhaps the magnitude we saw in hopefully not, but could lead to a recession of the kind of magnitude we saw in 2007 to 2009 with those same kind of persistent effects on output. And that's because it's the fear itself that breeds of low capacity that breeds the conditions where actually central banks can't respond effectively. So that's what worries me, and that's why I think we have these low nominal rates around the world. Is you look at German debt, for example, out to 10 years and negative nominal yields. This is all a fear factor, and we need to have better expectations of growth. I'm not sure where that's going to come from, though.
Okay. Professor, thank you. Appreciate all your time this morning and your perspective. It's kind of starkly opposed to Robert Schiller. Just had him on. He says we've actually hit our numbers on inflation for the most part and thinks we should be tightening. So that's what makes a market, I guess. But we appreciate your time. A programming note: CNBC's Fed coverage from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, kicks off later this week. All day Thursday and Friday, we're going to bring you access to the most important economic policy makers in the world. This is like Jackson Hole in August, probably one of the greatest places in the world, and I don't know, Leisman's there. It's nice for him. Anyway, we'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank you to everything that gets...
Live big and spend less on the brands you adore, and dine by the waterside. Who could want more? Lap up the savings as much as the view with Ted Baker, Hackett, Nike, and Coach too. Lock Fine and Five Guys make it a date. You can shop, meet, and eat every weekday till late. So sit back, unwind, and let style lead the way. And give yourself a different day at Gunwharf Keys. Waterfront outlet shopping.
Make sure you're uni-ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home-from-home comforts and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of homes.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
With Rapid Insurance on Vodafone Business, we'll get a replacement phone to you within 4 hours. So if you should...
Oh, no.
Or even... Just get in touch and we'll...
Your replacement phone, sir?
Your phone replaced within 4 hours with our Rapid Insurance. Available on our new and limited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone Business.
Max download upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Unlimited and rapid terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
It had been 22 years since Dan and Tom last met. Since they shared a desk in maths and played football together at lunchtime. 22 years with nothing more than a few Christmas cards and an online friend request to show for it. A 21st century eulogy for the loss of a once great friendship. Until a chance meeting outside the corner shop. On a morning they both decided to ditch the car and walk instead. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The biggest cat in the world was longer than a cricket bat. Think that's big? Tonight, the Euro Millions jackpot is a gigantic £82 million. 82 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. The Financial Times reporting this morning that Apple may be spending much more on Apple TV Plus content than they had originally said. Price tag, $6 billion. That's what the Financial Times is saying. But our next guest source says that number may be incorrect and may, in fact, be billions less. Joining us right now on the Squawk Newsline is Dylan Byers. He is the senior media reporter for NBC News, and he is contradicting that FT report this morning. Dylan, what can you tell us?
Yeah, well, what my sources tell me is that the number is actually significantly less, and I don't mean like a rounding error. I mean, by billions. I think what is significant here, one of the problems is that we tend to sort of see the amount of money that media companies spend on original content as somehow being indicative about the success of their long-term strategy. And the fact of the matter is that despite the fact that Apple, Netflix, HBO, Amazon are all launching streaming services or have streaming services, they're actually in very different businesses. And Apple is not in the Netflix business. It is not in the Disney Plus business. It does not need to spend billions and billions of dollars to amass a vast content library of original content. What it needs to do is create enough original content that it can create a video platform that it can bundle with Apple Music, with Apple Games, with Apple, the Apple credit card, the iCloud, and create a service that basically keeps customers inside the greater Apple universe, keeps them on Apple hardware, keeps them using Apple software.
Dylan, one of the things we've been debating this morning, though, is reportedly this service is going to cost $9.99 when it launches. At least according to some reports, there should be only 5 shows that they would launch with that. And relative to a Disney Plus or relative to a Netflix, which obviously has a vast library of content, and the fact that they are selling these products, at least it seems like independently of each other, meaning Apple Music will be sold a la carte versus this would be sold a la carte versus iCloud storage would be sold a la carte, whether that is enough content to attract and persuade people not only to buy it for a month, but to stay there.
And the answer is no, it is probably not. And what I would say is I don't, based on my conversations with sources, I don't put a lot of stock in that $9.99 figure either. I think we're going to see a sort of more complex rollout where you're going to have free trials and tiered systems where there will be some sort of bundle over time. And then also Apple is going to, yes, it's going to start with just a handful of shows and it will roll out more shows over time. But again, I think the big picture here is that Apple is not, this is not just, an original content play in the sense of like a Netflix service. This is about giving added value to that larger Apple experience that, like you said, includes music, includes games, includes all of the other services that Apple offers. Exactly how they roll that out, my anticipation based off of these conversations I've had is that we'll get more details on that in the days and weeks ahead.
And is that a September launch? You think that's an October launch? Some of the reports are suggesting November, and yet you're seeing promotions already, and Tim Cook tweeting it out yesterday, that trailer for the new morning show with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon.
That's right. It is definitely within that time period of the next 2 to 3 months, whether it's September or October, I don't know. I think we tend to believe that Apple sort of rolls out these ideas as if they're fully formed. I think everything about how Apple has entered the streaming space and the original content space has actually been sort of much more, it's been much more ad hoc, and they've sort of experimented here, rolled out things slowly, not necessarily when they first announced a lot of these shows, they didn't even have trailers ready for them. So I think Apple is sort of moving at its own pace here, and you can read that as a signal that, oh, maybe Apple isn't ready, maybe Apple isn't serious about original content, maybe Apple doesn't actually know what it's doing in this area. I don't think they fundamentally believe that. I think that they are very seriously committed to this original content play, again, as a piece of the larger offering to Apple users and Apple customers.
Fair enough. Dylan, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your perspective in the news this morning. You bet.
It's a big week for retail results. This morning, we've already gotten numbers from Home Depot and Kohl's. TJX is expected in the next few minutes. For more on what we've seen and what we can expect this week, let's bring in Joe Feldman. He is Senior Managing Director at Telsey Advisory Group. And the stocks this morning, at least for Home Depot and Kohl's, are up pretty sharply, Joe. Despite some disappointing numbers, is that because the street's kind of looking through this, or because they weren't more concerned about what may happen with tariffs down the road?
Yeah, it seems like the numbers came in a little bit better than what was being feared for Kohl's, for sure. And in terms of they're talking about getting better trends in the second half of the quarter and heading into back to school, getting back to a positive same-store sales. Home Depot, however, put up pretty good results. I mean, a 3% comp was basically in line. When you look at it a 2-year stack, so this year plus last year, it accelerated to 11%. They did moderate their outlook for the full year, but that was expected. We were modeling a 4, the street was around a 4, so we all kind of knew that was going to come. And it is related to some tariff pressure. I think housing pressure as well is there. But they also called out lumber price deflation being a bigger driver than what we had previously thought. So we'll have to to get more information about that on the call.
Put this together with what we heard from Walmart already, where they raised guidance and said that they feel pretty comfortable with things, despite what's happening with any of the broader implications from tariffs or other things. They say the consumer is looking healthy. What does that tell you about this universe?
Yeah, we keep hearing that, from a lot of the retailers. Even Walmart called that out, that the consumer's pretty healthy. Home Depot this morning had called that out. And I think that that's true. Right now, the consumer is pretty healthy, but there is some concern heading into the back half that there's tariff pressure and what that's going to mean. We hear it's upwards of $1,000 for the average family in terms of an impact. And so we're going to have to see how that plays out. Hopefully the job situation stays relatively stable and we'll see spending continue. However, what we've also noticed is the spending's happening at the lower to middle income type places. I think Target's going to have probably good results tomorrow. Walmart was very good last week. TJ we would expect to be pretty solid. And I think that whole discount world has really been where you've seen the trends hold up better than the more discretionary names.
What should we be listening for in the companies that we're going to hear in the rest of this week?
Yeah, I think you want to hear more about tariffs and what people are thinking the tariff impact is going to be. Our sense is that it really pushes more into 2020, just given that the way they're currently structured and, with half of the remaining $300 million really happening now in September and then the rest in December. And a lot of the retailers have kind of planned for this. So I think that will be okay for holiday season. It's really about 2020 and the outlook for the balance of the year, where the consumer's spending. And again, I think it's going to be more in that discount needs-based categories is where we're going to see the spending holding up a little bit better.
Joe, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming up, not me. Other Joe. Coming up, it's nice to be thanked. I know we have to be here, but it's still nice to feel somewhat appreciated. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is here, live on Squawk Box. We're going to ask America's chief diplomat if he sees a way out of the Trump administration's trade war with China. Get him to weigh in on the protest movements gripping Hong Kong and other things. A wide array of topics. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
Hemorrhoids. You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialize in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Did you know Currys PC World do business? Saving your business up to 30% with mega deals on computers and printers, electricals, large screen TVs, and even more. Top brands like HP, Microsoft, Epson, Sony. And if you find it cheaper from any major retailer, we'll match it. Get these deals before they're gone. Must end soon. Visit your nearest store or pcworldbusiness.co.uk/megadeals. T's and C's apply. Excludes Inc. and third-party sellers. Visit website for price promise details. Claim within 7 days.
Silence the squawk. Find brand new cars ready to drive away today with Auto Trader.
With a welcome bonus from the no annual fee British Airways American Express credit card, your next getaway's not far away. So whether it's welcome to drifting down the canals of Amsterdam or bienvenue to midnight strolls in Paris, say welcome to a European adventure. Spend £1,000 in your first 3 months of card membership and get 5,000 bonus Avios. That's enough to get away to Europe sooner. Search BA Amex to find out more. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Applicants must be 18 years or older, subject to approval. Terms, taxes, fees and carrier charges apply.
When we come back, your biggest morning movers for the stocks says futures are pointing toward, it's been a relatively flat session so far. Dow implied open up by about 17 points. We're in the green, but just barely. And we are just a few minutes away from a sit-down with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He will join us live when Squawk Box returns.
You guys played your hearts out.
The sun gently fell below the horizon. Rays of pure gold filled the sky, illuminating the towering structures of the London skyline. What else could Jane do but gaze in awe? She was but a silhouette upon a hill, wrapped up in a spectacle so perfect. No words, oil paintings, or smartphone filters could do it justice. She savoured it. Before hopping back on her bike and riding off, she had to finish her commute home. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
If your old faithful fridge freezer is broken or on the blink again, relax. At AO, we have a huge range jam-packed with the latest technology to keep your weekly favourites fresher than ever. Plus, there's great deals on top brands like Haier, Bosch and Beko with finance options available. AO.com, the online electrical store. AO! Let's go! Credit is subject to status. Must be over 18. AO Retail Limited is a broker and not a lender. Credit is provided by Secure Trust Bank PLC, trading as V12 Retail Finance.
Hello?
Hi, it's Helen from the dry cleaners here. We found something in the pocket of the trousers you brought in.
Oh, really? What was it?
Another pair of trousers.
Oh, how'd that happen?
Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy the delicious spicy chicken snack wrap. Just $1.49 from the McDonald's Saver menu. Served after 10:30am, except in selected restaurants, which will serve this from 11am. Price and participation may vary.
Oh no. 1 kebab, 4 cabs, 3 karaoke booths.
But really?
You can't always recall what you spent on a night out, but you could map the location of those transactions on our mobile banking app. Feel in control every day. Lloyds Bank, by your side. Not available for every transaction. T's and C's apply.
Whether your politics swing right, left, up or down, the road to 2020 runs through TuneIn. Get every angle of the 2020 presidential race with complete coverage from the campaign trail on TuneIn.
Live from the TuneIn studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Well, some games to catch today. We've got the Washington Nationals at the Pittsburgh Pirates. First pitch is going to be at 4:05 p.m. Pacific.
And Dickerson with a high drive to right. Corey Dickerson's going to have a 2-homer game. Clear the deck, a cannonball coming. 5 ribbies for Corey Dickerson, 8-2 Pirates.
You want the latest of what's going on? Well, you can try us on social media. It's always at TuneIn. Or just follow your favorite team. A favorite. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
MLB is right here on TuneIn.
A swing and a drive to right field. That's it. Well, Ramirez back, and that ball's gone.
And to find it all, you need to search MLB on TuneIn.
By the wall, out of here.
Home and away calls are a click away on TuneIn Premium.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow at TuneIn and always be in the know.
Welcome back to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. We're about an hour now to the opening bell on Wall Street. Futures are much calmer today than they've been recently. And joining us now to tell us what's behind the sudden calm, Joe Murio from TJM Institutional Services, also a CNBC contributor. Our own Rick Santelli is joining us as well. The Dow looks like it would open up about 23 points higher right about now. But, Jim, what's going on here?
I still think it's the good news today is they're talking about payroll taxes. Trump pressures the Fed. The Fed's still, the overarching theme to me is that the Fed is there to backstop any unreasonably high volatility. I don't think we've seen any reactions yet from the Fed to stock market moves yet, but they've done it before. So I think at the end of the day, low rates can counterbalance all the things on the negative side of the ledger, which is, the tariffs, Argentina. We don't even talk about that anymore. That was a week ago. Even Hong Kong. I think the market believes that the Fed still has our back.
Rick, A, do you agree with that? And B, I did not know that that was on the list of things the Fed was supposed to do. It was supposed to help with volatility in the stock market. I've heard about inflation. I've heard about jobs. But I didn't. That's like an extra mandate that was not on the list that I had been told about.
You're like the great Kreskin. I was going to say the real job of the Fed, let's synthesize the pillars. Lender of last resort. Not the feel-good indice group, not the I'm going to make your returns always good group, not providing stimulus when we're probably quite far from a recession. You know, I guess the ECB and the Bank of Japan subscribe to those rules, and I was hoping that the pull of our mandates, much more conservative historically, would be more apt to rub off on them, but it is going the other way. So, Andrew, I completely agree with you.
There's nothing I said, by the way, that makes me disagree with you two. What the Fed is actually doing compared to what they're supposed to do is wildly different. And I'll throw in one thing else, too. The Fed right now thinks they have to keep us from ever having a recession. I think that's not in their mandate either. I think what they're supposed to have done was to take the sharp edges off recessions. And now they don't do that, and all they do is coil the spring, and then it blows up on us every 10 to 11 years.
Well, let me ask both of you gentlemen then. You know, we've been having this big debate. Is a recession coming? We had Neil Irwin on. He sort of walked through his, view of how a recession could come in 2020. So where are we?
I hate simplistic answers. I hate simplistic answers. The yield curve's inverted. You know, all of these things. It seems as though nobody wants to do their homework. When anything gets cloudy, they run to the Fed. Listen, I understand there's certain deteriorations going on, especially on the industrial side. I understand that many of the financial institutions around the globe are feverish because of negative interest rates. But at the end of the day, I think as much as the deterioration has occurred in the U.S. from the best optimum economic levels of early 2018, we are humming along pretty darn well. And considering everything going on, a Fed that's under siege by a president, and listen, I don't have a problem with his opinion. I just think that maybe he ought to reevaluate what he really wants. Does he really want to manipulate his currency lower? All these issues, and the market's still doing pretty well. And even though many think it's the hint of more Fed down the road, I don't think so. And I think the Fed needs to break that.
Gentlemen.
Andrew, I'd throw in that the inversion of the yield curve is nothing to me. When you have 10 years of central banks trying to push long-end rates low, when they go lower than short-end rates, I mean, it's obviously got there from manually. It's not an organic occurrence.
Gentlemen, got to thank you. We have a big interview coming up in just a moment.
That's right. In fact, when we return, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will join us live on set. We'll ask the Secretary to weigh in on unrest in Hong Kong and the latest tensions with Iran. And we'll talk about the Trump administration's stance on Huawei amid some mixed messaging this week. Stay tuned. Squawk Box will be right back.
How do you gauge the greatness of an SUV?
Hemorrhoids. You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere. Because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialize in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime. And the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
Silence the squawk. Find brand new cars ready to drive away today with Auto Trader.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
With a welcome bonus from the no annual fee British Airways American Express credit card, your next getaway's not far away. So whether it's welcome to drifting down the canals of Amsterdam or be Avenue to midnight strolls in Paris. Say welcome to a European adventure. Spend £1,000 in your first 3 months of card membership and get 5,000 bonus Avios. That's enough to get away to Europe sooner. Search BA Amex to find out more. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Applicants must be 18 years or older, subject to approval. Terms, taxes, fees and carrier charges apply.
The sun gently fell below the horizon. Rays of pure gold filled the sky, illuminating the towering structures of the London skyline. What else could Jane do but gaze in awe? She was but a silhouette upon a hill, wrapped up in a spectacle so perfect, no words, oil paintings, or smartphone filters could do it justice. She savoured it. Before hopping back on her bike and riding off, she had to finish her commute home. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
All right, welcome back to Squawk Box. Let's get right to our big Squawk newsmaker this morning. Let's welcome Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you.
Great to see you.
In Hong Kong, it's been very peaceful, thank God. What is the end game if it stays peaceful, but if there's a third of the population in the streets doing it? It's not a third, but it's a big number. It's over 1 million, and it's not that, it's not that.
Yeah, it's 7.5 million people in Hong Kong. So,
1.7 million. And as we said, these things have a way of not going away unless something's done or they get some type of concession or something bad happens. What's the end game?
Well, the end game is that the Chinese will uphold the commitment that they made, right? They made a promise, which was one country, two systems, that they would allow Hong Kong to continue to operate. We talk a lot about the protests. They're desiring us freedom and liberty, but we should remember, too, there's important businesses there, a lot of American interests. And the impact on Hong Kong, if this isn't resolved in a way that is peaceful and in accordance with those agreements, I think will be significant. And so we're hopeful that this will be resolved in the President used the word humane way, a way that reflects the right of these people to protest. And we hope that the Chinese will honor their commitment to Hong Kong, one that they made a handful of years back.
How do you think President Xi uses that calculus in his negotiations on trade with President Trump?
As the president talked about this a little bit on Sunday, if it ends in a way that there was violence, the president said something like Tiananmen Square, that it would make it more difficult. I think that's true. I hope that's not a factor. I hope that the trade negotiations move forward, and I hope that Hong Kong is resolved in a peaceful way. Those would be the best outcomes for both China and the United States.
I just wonder if President Xi says, you know what? The last thing I need right now is this trade thing, when I've got really the possibility of some type of Arab Spring event in China. I don't know whether it gets to that, and we're talking about a lot more people, and it's not Hong Kong, it's mainland China. But that's what I think that's what we're all wondering.
Joe, remember too, the trade deal is very important to President Xi as well. This is an economy that has grown at a rate of 6-7%, whatever number you believe. The impact of the reimposition of tariffs on China will have an enormous impact on the Chinese population.
Be related. And if the economy slows, it's harder to keep everyone under the autocratic system, and the yearning for freedom becomes even more front and center if the economy
as President Trump has said, we hope we can get to a good resolution of these trade agreements, and we can get the fair and reciprocal trade without tariff barriers, without them stealing our intellectual property, without the forced technology transfer, where American companies can invest on the same terms in China that Chinese companies can invest in America. Those are the simple things President Trump's asking for. I hope that President Xi will see his way clear to do that.
One of the main pieces of that puzzle, though, is Huawei, and there's been some mixed messages on Huawei recently.
No mixed messages.
The president has said he doesn't want to
None at all.
The president has said he doesn't want to do business with Huawei at all if he can avoid it. And yet, Wilbur Ross has come out and said that there are these licenses which will be granted or should be granted. Meanwhile, you have the CEO of Huawei come out and say, look, if you tell Google that they can't provide Android to us, we're going to build our own, and that means that there's going to be a new operating system effectively in the wild, and perhaps the West isn't going to like that.
President Trump's been unambiguous. I don't think there's a mixed message at all. The threat of having Chinese telecom systems inside of American networks or inside of networks around the world presents an enormous risk, a national security risk. Our mission set is to provide a way to reduce that risk, to take that risk down as much as we possibly can. I will concede the world was late to the game. We let Huawei and Chinese telecoms get a big jump start on us for a decade or a decade and a half. It's not political. It was across both political parties. President Trump has now said that's a risk that we can't take to our American national security, to protect the American people's privacy. You don't want the Chinese Communist Party inside of your network. And so we're driving towards achieving that outcome.
But why did the Commerce Department just yesterday say that they're going to extend these waivers for the next 90 days?
No, there are elements. There are elements that don't have anything to do with national security. There are components that make sense that don't pose that threat. And we're trying to find the right spot where the national security risks are addressed, but we compete fairly and allow our companies to trade.
I thought this was for rural networks here in the United States.
It is. We're working our way through to figure out how to deliver, given the 10 to 15 year head start that they had. You can't get there all at once, but we're driving towards the right outcome.
But the other component of this is the Defense Department has effectively said, look, the manifestation of these Huawei networks around the world, in China, in Africa, and other places where effectively Huawei is not only licensing, they're providing loans so that their technology gets there, that unto itself represents a national security risk.
That's correct. Not only has the Department of Defense said it, so has the State Department.
But if that's true, then wouldn't you want to shut them down entirely? So that's where I think when I said we said there's a mixed message or confusion, I think that's where this waiver issue becomes complicated.
Right. So we've not been entirely successful around the world. There were installed systems, there's installed bases, there's enormous cost in some of these transitions. The same is true in places inside the United States as well. You can't rip and tear it all out at once. And so our effort is to put together a pathway where these risks connected to these, and it's not just Huawei, the focus is often Huawei, it's broader than that. The risk from Chinese Communist Party connected telecom companies isn't present in the United States, or the trusted networks in which the United States participates all around the world.
But you're talking decades or longer before we.
No, I don't think it'll be that long. But it is true. If we ignore it and let it go away, we'll never get it back.
And you don't see President Xi saying, "Look, if you're going to put us in this position with Huawei, we can't even talk to you on these other issues."
It's not been our experience. It's not what's happening today.
So you think that President Xi has effectively given up on Huawei to some degree?
No, I think he's prepared to engage in a complex set of trade negotiations that our team, Secretary Mnuchin and Ambassador Lighthizer, are engaged in. So no, he hasn't walked away. He hasn't said, I won't talk if you do these things. He has said, we need to sit down and have a conversation about the trade relationship, not only between the United States and China, but China's place in the World Trade Organization, all of the broader trade issues that exist as well.
The other intersection of state and commerce and treasury is Iran, I think, because of oil prices. And the R words being thrown around now, the last thing we need is an oil shock or something right now. But Iran, you probably wake up in the morning and they hand you those papers and you're like, I don't know if I want to really look at that today, but I'm ready for something from Iran once a week. They're stirring things up, are they not? When does it affect oil prices, do you think?
So I'm at a UN Security Council meeting. It's why I came to New York today, talking about this threat from Iran. I remember back, Joe, when we withdrew from the JCPOA, when the president made that decision, the right decision, folks said crude oil would go to $100 a barrel, 110. You can go read some of the major financial institutions right in this town. When I woke up this morning, Brent crude, $58, WTI, a little less than that, 55, 56. We have managed to take almost 2.7 million barrels of crude oil off of the markets by denying Iran the wealth to create their terror campaign around the world. And we have managed to keep the oil markets fully supplied. I'm confident we can continue to do that.
Do you see the possibility of dealing with the Taliban in a good faith way in Afghanistan?
So my team's been out negotiating with the Afghan government and with the Taliban over the last 6-7 months now. Our desire is to create conditions on the ground where we can achieve what President Trump laid out, which is to reduce what is $35 billion a year in taxpayer money and the loss of American lives that I see out at Dover. I see injuries at Walter Reed. That's the mission set. The conversations are going well, but in the end, it will be about what's delivered on the ground, whether that's from the Afghan government, other Afghans that aren't inside the Afghan government, the Taliban. The truth will be in the reality. What really happens on the ground? If we can reduce violence, we'll create a space where we can withdraw not only American support, but NATO forces that are there as well.
I think we need, we're globe hopping. I think the most important thing, I think, in terms of our viewer is probably tariffs and China, obviously. And we still don't know whether a big deal is possible before the election. And what we're hearing, that the way that this is resolved near term is with some half measures that kicks the can down the road and maybe get some ag buys and some agreements that aren't codified into Chinese law, but that, some assurances that we're not going to steal anything anymore. But, those haven't worked in the past. Can we expect anything better before November of 2020 when Xi knows there's an election here and he knows he doesn't have one, although he probably has one every day, really?
Joe, I've not heard the president talk about these half measures that you speak of. He's been very focused on achieving a set of priorities that he laid out for the team.
Is that possible before the election?
It's up to President Xi. And the two of them have developed a good relationship. I hope the teams get back together in the next week or 10 days, at least by phone, and then perhaps in person shortly after that. I don't know the outcome. In the end, the Chinese government has to make a fundamental decision about whether they want to compete in the world on fair and reciprocal terms or whether they want to continue to abuse the international trading system in the way that they have. President Trump's made that very clear that those are essentially the two choices for China.
What do you expect the reception to be at the UN today? I mean, how do you kind of look at the room and figure out where all these sides line up?
Yeah, so different folks have different views all across the world. We have many Europeans that are with us. We have the E3 who have a different approach to Iran than we've taken. They've stayed inside the JCPOA. We'll have folks from all across the world, other regions as well. We'll have the Gulf states who are fully on board with our efforts. So there'll be a wide range of views. But consistent amongst all of them is the deep understanding that the greatest threat to stability in the Middle East is the Islamic Republic of Iran. However they think about the JCPOA, there won't be a voice in the room, unless the Iranians show up themselves, who doesn't agree with that.
Andrew, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to ask you about Bitcoin in terms of terrorism. In terms of terrorism, yes. Okay, G7 is this week as well, and both Japan and France both have working groups trying to figure out Libra and what would need to be done with Libra. So everyone's thinking about how to deal with this. Now I'm hearing great fears that the terrorists are already being funded, or some of their operations with crypto. Have you seen this? It's happening already.
I've seen some of the reports.
Yeah, we've seen Secretary Mnuchin come on and express great angst about any type of virtual currency and the type of nefarious activities that could come from that. In fact, I said, well, we've had some nefarious activities with dollars, too. And he goes, well, I don't know of any of it. And it was kind of funny. It became kind of a viral moment because every nefarious activity prior to this has been, all the money laundering has been done with cash so far.
Some real currency.
Yeah, exactly. So it happened.
So just a warning.
Yeah, so where are you on what kind of world we'd have if things were much harder, if things were not anonymous, but much harder to trace? Do you think that that's the world we're going to have in 5 years?
I hope not. It would decrease the security for the world if that's the direction we travel. I'm going to try not to create a viral moment or a meme this morning.
In this case.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to try. Look, the risk with anonymous transactions is one that we all know well. We know this from 9/11 and terror activity that took place in the 15 years preceding that, where we didn't have good tracking. We didn't have the capacity to understand money flows and who was moving money. It has helped keep the entire world secure to fight terrorism and other nefarious activity, criminal activity as well, by having access to this information. We need to preserve a financial system, a global financial system that protects that.
Secretary, just very quickly, you rattled off crude oil prices today. So clearly you watch that market pretty closely. Do you watch all markets? How much does that play into your role, and how much does the volatility we've seen recently have an impact on what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I watch all the markets very closely. Our equity markets, the global equity markets, our bond markets as well, borrowing capacity in countries around the world. My job is quintessentially economic, to create a situation where the American economy can prosper. We protect American national security in the context of a growing U.S. economy.
Let me ask you, we're sort of popping around on different topics, but it relates to you. He had mentioned Libra earlier. That got me thinking about Facebook. Facebook and Twitter just yesterday, there were reports that they effectively shut down some accounts, Chinese accounts, that may have been spreading misinformation related to Hong Kong and whatnot. What do you think the roles of Facebook and Twitter and social media should be? The president has expressed all sorts of concerns about those companies. We now have antitrust regulators looking at those companies at the same time, and yet there's national security issues or even issues that you're contending with.
Sure.
That they're in the midst of.
Look, I can't do justice to that question in 15, 20 seconds, other than to say I saw those reports too. They are very consistent with our understanding of Chinese efforts around the world. I remember when the Russia thing was all in the news, and I reminded people that it's not just Russia. There's the same kind of activity taking place out of China, out of North Korea, out of Iran. I think it is a international challenge. These are international businesses grown here in America. We need to get the policy right from a security perspective. I'm happy to talk about it at greater length sometime, but
do we, the U.S., use those services for propaganda?
We do not.
In other countries?
We do not. We do not spread false information intentionally anywhere in the world. It is against U.S. law, and we don't do it.
Are you, how long are you going to be Secretary of State? Do you have, what's your future? You're a young man. What about Kansas Senate?
I'm very focused on this job, Joe. I'm going to be the Secretary of State as long as President Trump continues to want me to be his Secretary of State.
What if he said, we need you in Kansas as a senator?
He and I'd have a serious conversation. But I must say...
Never say never?
I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I hear all the chatter. I see it. I think the only one not talking about my Kansas Senate run is me.
Right. You could serve with Beto and Hickenlooper, maybe, in case they don't make it all the way this time. I don't know what the chances are.
This is what I hear. I follow U.S. domestic politics less than I follow international financial markets by a significant amount.
How do you regulate these things that like Libra or a Bitcoin? What do you do? Bitcoin's going to be tough to regulate. It's already out of the bag, isn't it?
My sense is this. We should use the same framework that we use to regulate all other electronic financial transactions today. That's essentially what these are. These are monies moving through markets, or in some case disintermediated transactions. But we should regulate them in the same way. The same set of requirements that apply to things flowing through SWIFT or flowing through our financial institutions ought to apply to those transactions as well. I concede it will be difficult to do, but the regulatory theory that we ought to apply is that one.
Okay, we didn't talk much about cyber security. That scares me to death too. You
every morning.
Every morning.
That too. Every morning there's real risk.
How thick is the brief?
What was in the brief this morning?
Yeah, tell us something nobody else knows.
It was a crowded briefing this morning. It takes me, depending on the time I have, an hour and a half to get through it with any level of detail.
Do you need a cocktail after you see what's going on around the world, or that's TMI? I know. Yeah,
Diet Coke is my addiction. Yes,
caffeine free. You don't need to be more. Anyways, Mr. Secretary, great to have you on.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, let's get down to Jim Cramer. He's at the New York Stock Exchange. And Jim, a lot of things I could ask you, but why don't you weigh in first on what you thought from Home Depot and some of the other retailers we've heard from this morning? Maybe not as much bad news as some had anticipated. In fact, saying that they still think the consumer's pretty strong.
Yes, and in each case, the cadence of the actual months, very, very positive, including the time after the quarter's close, which I think it's always great when they give you those. So, yes, I think that if you listen to these, you would go back to what Larry Kudlow said on Meet the Press, and you would agree that maybe optimism is in too much short supply, given how well these very big retailers actually reacted. Remember, Home Depot's gigantic and has a great read on the professional and on the person who is just trying to refurbish their home. These were very bullish numbers from Home Depot, and the fact that they had already flagged lumber, I don't know, the algorithms who read the headlines, they're just not reliable. They have been telling me, I met with Carol Tomei, the outgoing CFO, and she said lumber was a problem. So this is a very good quarter, very good, very strong.
So we've gotten that message from Walmart and from Home Depot. Do you think that that's going to be the rule or the exception when you look back at retail after the next week or so?
I think traditional brick and mortar mall, no. I think they're going to be terrible, like Macy's. I think that if you have a very good online strategy, or if you appeal to a particular kind of clientele, like the professional, you'll be fine. But it's very few that are good. It's just that they're very large. Walmart was fantastic. Amazon was great. I think Costco is going to be terrific. At Target tomorrow, there'll be people who think it's not good. I think that they'll end up thinking in the end that their same-day delivery is very strong. So I think that the big ones are winning, and the ones that are just pure mall-based, like a JCPenney or a Macy's, they're done. I think they're done.
Jim, I know yesterday before the Open you were a little concerned by how much the futures were up, that was maybe too much of a bounce back over 3 days running. What do you think now? It moderated a little bit, but what do you think kind of 24 hours later?
midday things fell, and then you just started seeing tremendous buying back in the NVIDIAs of the world. I mean, NVIDIA turned out to be the leader in semis, and NVIDIA could take a lot of stocks with it. I didn't expect that kind of pin action because NVIDIA is very different from a Texas Instruments or an NXPI or a Micron. But there was enough enthusiasm to carry that group around. The financials stopped going down. I don't know why. I guess people felt maybe if we uninvert, it's time to buy them. They don't have the earnings momentum that I'd like. But there were enough groups that have been beaten down that participated yesterday. I think that if we invert again today, we'll go right back down. But right now, things look okay.
Can't think of NVIDIA without thinking of your cute puppy, including some of those pictures you posted over there.
NVIDIA's, look, Everett used to answer to Everest. Now, strictly NVIDIA. Doesn't even remember Everest, frankly. But he's not a genius either.
Hey, Jim, thank you.
Not like Jensen Huang. He's, but that's all right. Not all dogs can be geniuses.
No. Jim, thank you. We're going to see you in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Squawk Box will be right back.
Every day,
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Live big and spend less on the brands you adore. And dine by the waterside. Who could want more? Lap up the savings as much as the view with Ted Baker, Hackett, Nike, and Coach too. Lock Fine and Five Guys make it a date. You can shop, meet, and eat every weekday till late. So sit back, unwind, and let style lead the way. And give yourself a different day at Gunwharf Keys. Waterfront outlet shopping.
Did you know Currys PC World do business? Saving your business up to 30% with mega deals on computers and printers, electricals, large screen TVs, and even more. Top brands like HP, Microsoft, Epson, Sony. And if you find it cheaper from any major retailer, we'll match it. Get these deals before they're gone. Must end soon. Visit your nearest store or pcworldbusiness.co.uk/megadeals. T's and C's apply. Excludes Inc. and third-party sellers. Visit website for price promise details. Claim within 7 days.
At the Bank of Antandek, they're looking for a mascot.
We need an icon. Something that says high flying to all our mortgage customers.
Like a falcon or a stallion.
Or even better, a parrot. Check it out.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they're concentrating on helping customers find ways to take years off their mortgage with their overpayment calculator. See what's possible at Santander.
All applications are subject to status and our lending criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Quick final check on markets right now. Well, we are looking like actually things have turned in the red just briefly. Dow about 15 points down, NASDAQ off about a point, S&P 500 off about, we'll call it 2 points for now, as we're just doing a little post-mortem on the conversation with the secretary, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Make sure you join us tomorrow. Squawk on the Street begins right now.
Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with Jim Cramer, David Faber at the New York Stock Exchange. Futures are steady as we're coming off 3 days up for the Dow and the S&P. Markets juggling a miss and a guide lower on Home Depot's comps. Along with these reports, the White House is mulling a payroll tax cut. Europe is mixed. Yields resuming their decline today. 10-year 155. Robat begins with a pause in all the volatility. Got some calmer waves over futures this morning.
Plus, we got a bit of a check on the U.S. consumer this morning. We'll break down earnings from Home Depot, Kohl's, and TJX.
And breaking up is hard to do. The chairman of the FTC weighing in on how to separate Facebook. The Dow and the S&P in the midst of a three-session win streak, moving closer to erasing all of their losses from Wednesday's big sell-off. But with stocks set for a modest open, does this signal a pause in the volatility? Jim, what do you think about that question?
Geez, I think that's probably wrong. I don't see a pause because at what point today do we start hearing about Jackson Hole and what Powell's going to say and what the president's going to charge? I mean, we're still dealing with a kind of a rosy hangover from the weekend talk shows where people are really buying into what Larry Kudlow said. And it's interesting, but Home Depot's comments are very much like what Larry Kudlow said, which is that things are a little better than people realize, and there is no recession. Business is pretty good. So I feel like when I hear those things, what it makes me think of is that the hawks on the Fed are going to be gunning for no more rate cuts, which obviously is not what this market wants. But there are hawks on there who are going to say, are we kidding ourselves? Home Depot was saying, one of the largest retailers in the country, is saying things are great and we have to cut, versus the president who's putting through perhaps a payroll tax cut, which is something you do when you have a real slowdown. Yeah. Looking for opportunities.
So you think the Home Depot miss on comps and the guide down on comps is great?
Yes, because I met with Carol Tomei not that long ago. She's the outgoing CFO. And what did she warn about? Weather, and she warned about maybe tariffs, but particularly lumber deflation. So if you had made some calls or talk with the company, and this was not regulation, FDA wasn't violating it, she went on air to say it, then you'd realize that exactly what hurt the numbers was what she said would hurt the numbers, which is tremendous lumber deflation. So when you have something that is actually told by the company, and then the headline writers or the headline algorithms or the computers, the artificial intelligence computers say that that's a miss, how can they not have included the asterisk that Carol Tomei, who's one of the greatest CFOs, said would be a problem? And that's why people should recognize, why is the stock up? And the answer is that the CFO, outgoing CFO, said over and over again, lumber deflation. And that, by the way, is very bullish for the home builders, because people forget how high lumber was and how much it cost to Toll Brothers and Lennar. In the meantime, affordability of housing goes down. Goes up, because of rates. Affordability of housing is terrific. Yes. So we have a situation where some of the hawks, not hacks. I don't know why I said hacks.
Freud, paging Dr. Freud.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say hacks on the Federal Reserve. I meant some of the hawks on the Federal Reserve are going to say, listen, Home Depot says that maybe even we should raise numbers. I want to distinguish. Who did I say? Hawks. Right.
Not hacks.
Not hacks.
You mentioned some of the technical drivers as well, though. And it's interesting because J.P. Morgan this morning in one of their notes comments on the market volatility, but more specific to their interest rate research team. They say more than half of the recent move in rates and the inversion of the yield curve was caused by technical drivers. Convexity hedging of mortgages, bank portfolios, variable annuities, and poor liquidity conditions. And so less than half of the move can be explained by fundamentals, such as growth, inflation, and monetary policy outlook. We do have to keep an eye open for those kinds of moves that have the effect of accentuating the larger moves in the market, which we all then attribute fundamental reasons for. And oftentimes, it's not all fundamental.
You're so right. I was doing some convexity work, which is trying to figure out.
You were doing convexity work? Was that on your house or on your floor? What was the
house?
Doing convexity work in the house?
House?
Yeah.
Houses. Got it. See, I've got a housing business.
I know you do.
Convexity is an issue. It's like, when do there's pay down in mortgages, and people don't realize pay down in mortgages is very aggressive.
Yes.
Look at the rate, and we've never seen that before. So we tend not to see these behind the scene reasons why you might get what you did in the yield curve. Who did that piece?
Marco
Kola.
Yeah.
Kola.
Who's got a PhD, by the way. So.
Oh, well, I got one of those.
Well, and
give those away like
JPM's larger point is that because so much of the selling has been technically driven, they argue, they plan to step back in September. It's a big part of their tactical strategy right now.
How about that Morgan Stanley guy who just hates it? Was he been
Wilson?
Yeah,
no, he's still looking for
Wilson?
for 2,700.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Dennis.
Which trade do you prefer?
I was listening to Pompeo, Secretary Pompeo, this morning. If the Chinese are in as much weak in position as he says they are, then you got to take the long side. I do think that if you're going to get a payroll tax cut at the same time as you have a cut in rates,
do we really believe that's a possibility?
Well, they said it.
Okay, but do we actually think it could happen?
Got any intelligence you can share that to add to the Post, Washington Post and the Times today?
No, there's very closed lips on this one. Closed lips on this one, but I do think that there's some good news out there. I am such a creature of watch, which is of course Walmart, Amazon, Target, Costco, and Home Depot. We now have Walmart, Amazon, and Home Depot, saying amazing things. So I think there is this gold. And that's not Goldilocks because there's no chair that's broken. I mean, you're dealing with the possibility of a payroll tax cut, which has historically been really great for the economy.
Well, some people say it's historically been saved because people know it's not forever.
Right. True, but I just think that things are pretty good in the economy.
And to your point, it usually comes when it's like, whoa, we got a tidal wave coming, we got to run.
Yeah, you have like minus 2% GDP.
Yeah.
But remember, we do have this situation where the president's calling the Fed chief clueless. Larry Kudlow is saying things are incredibly good. At the same time, we need this payroll tax cut. We're kind of in this on steroids market, and we need Black Zero. Black Zero is not an HBO show. It happens to be the emergency plan to have stimulus in Germany.
Oh, really? They have a name for that?
Black Zero. You know, like Zero Dark 30?
Yeah.
It's Black Zero. You get Black Zero, and you get the hawks on the Fed to be quiet, and then you have a browbeaten Fed chief thinking that we need cuts. You got Larry Kudlow saying optimism. Then it's very hard to fight that tape. You're fighting everything. You're fighting the Fed. You're fighting the president. You're fighting Kudlow. You're fighting the Chinese.
All you're betting
Black
on
Zero.
is Cisco guidance, Macy's, Deere, AMAT, industrial production, and Michigan at a 7-month low.
Macy's is done. So let's take that off the table.
It's what?
Done.
Done? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, you're not going to get a turn there. It's in the mall. What do you think the 9% yield was?
It's funny. There was a time when you were supportive.
Well, because I was wrong.
And you're no longer supportive.
It's kind of like in the movie Witness when she says, I thought you said we'd be safe in Philadelphia. Harrison Ford says, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Right. Yes.
I was wrong. I mean, I admit it. Look, I thought that the mall and the strategy and Herald Square, which is beautiful,
I was misinformed. Said Humphrey Bogart about
I was ill-advised.
I don't think
the mall is so horrible.
I don't think you were counting on sales to tourists going down 9 from down 3 the prior quarter.
No, I know, but see, there was this line in the conference call about women these ready to wear the women's fashion. They got it wrong, and I found myself thinking, do you think it matters whether Amazon got women's fashion wrong? How do you compete against a company that it doesn't matter if they got women's fashion? They can't get anything wrong. Plus, when you listen to Jensen Huang on the NVIDIA call, it's all artificial intelligence. I mean, they know. Do you know what the machines can do now? Let's say David says something he says something that's really mean to me. He's been known to do that, and he does the arms thing, and he says, get out of town. Currently, computers would say, I got to go, across the river. The new artificial intelligence inference chips that Jensen Huang has at NVIDIA, they would interpret that maybe you were skeptical.
They would. They would actually pick that up.
Yes,
that human emotion.
It is absolutely.
There might be some skepticism on my part.
David,
look askance at you.
David, go jump in a lake. Well, computers currently would have you go somewhere in New Jersey and at Lake Opaka.
Right.
The new Jensen chips say,
no,
I am questioning his judgment.
That is actually a big advance.
No, it's unbelievable.
They are getting closer and closer to exceeding human intelligence.
They're there. That and ray tracing, where you could actually be a simulation and no one would know. Why does NVIDIA go up ever since that quarter? Why does it continue to go up? Because of it's called inference. They have the ability. The computers now with Jensen's chips have the ability to infer. That's incredible.
So what do they say about Macy's? Those chips?
They're inferring that they got the wrong merchandise and people don't want to go to the mall. Now it's done. I mean, look, I'm speaking about Macy's generically.
9.4% dividend yield. Don't touch it.
I'm speaking about Macy's generically. Did you listen to the J.C. Penney call?
I did not.
Well, you're blessed. Because in the conference call, they said that we now have national brands. Well, what do you think the millennials are rebelling against? National brands.
Didn't stop the chair of JCP from buying 1 million of the shares at 59 cents last week.
59 cents. I mean, there's not many things that are 59
Coal sells some national brands, don't they?
Well, they're not doing well in that one. I think they're doing well, and that's why Kohl's has started up too and has been going back down. What they're doing well is they got Amazon in the back. You can return things there, and they got Planet Fitness. Do you know what they do on Tuesdays at Planet Fitness?
What do they do on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
No, what?
Pizza night, to try to make people feel a little less, you go into Equinox, and it's like, wow, I'm fat and weak. I'm like, geez, I got to get out of here. I am pathetic. You go into Planet Fitness, like, I'm svelte and tough.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a long time about Kohl's efforts to drive traffic, but comps still missed. Down 2.9, looking for 2.5 down.
My Charitable Trust owns it. The stock was down 5 after Macy's. Now, remember, they're strip mall, which is better.
By the way,
I want to Macy's is a metaphor.
The stock had looked up as much as 4 or 5%
big short
in the pre-market.
Big short squeeze, and they'll come back down. The shorts are pushing it. I'm using Macy's metaphorically.
Understood.
JCPenney. Now, Steve Tanger talks about, and I want to go right to David.
JCPenney and Macy's together doesn't help Macy's, but go ahead, sorry.
Sephora's doing okay. Steve Tanger says, David, that the real weakness is not necessarily the brick and mortar, the JCPenney. It's heavily indebted companies that came out of the leveraged buyouts, like a Michael's Stores kind of thing. That's what they say is the real weakness.
Kept alive by years of low rates.
Yes.
People say Sears would have been gone years earlier.
That should have exited the stage a long time ago.
Yes. What do you think about that?
I think that there's some truth to it.
Now, why does Macy's not get credit for paying down all that debt? And I think the answer there is Estee Lauder, as Fabrizio Freda is saying, is that the amount of money you needed to invest in online is incredible. I mean, look, when you go over what Target did, I mean, Brian Cornell does not have the kind of money that a Walmart or Amazon does, but you know what? They still managed to put a huge amount of money onto online, and that's what you have to do. And Macy's has to spend more on.
Well, look, Journal did a piece yesterday about BBB rated companies deleveraging, and when you do that, your expansion plans, your CapEx, your investment collapses.
I know.
Right?
Do you think Bed Bath could pull it off? They did have $1 billion in the bank. That stock. Have you seen Bed Bath?
Yes. I mean, it's barely worth discussing anymore. Its market cap is so low.
Wow. That's what I feel about the 59 cents. You know what's interesting about that JCPenney buy? It is hard to find things at Dollar Tree for 59 cents. So maybe what he's doing, he's looking for a real bargain, right? Do you know that Dollar Tree now has things that are for more than $1, which is certainly better than that JCPenney stock price? They had like -9 comp. It's like, hey, we're really things are starting to look up.
Looking better. Yeah.
They're looking better.
Yeah.
Where's Lampert lately?
I have not heard.
How about Seritage?
Mr. Lampert.
Seritage.
What about Seritage?
It's a company.
I know. I
thought it was a bed. Seritage. Sleep better on a Seritage.
Maybe it will be.
When we come back, we'll get Kramer's Mad Dash. He's got a lot to choose from today as we get closer to the opening bell. Take a look at the market. We'll get you this upgrade of Beyond Meat, the amount of money Apple is spending on shows, some layoffs at U.S. Steel. We're back in just a moment.
There are certain things in life we simply don't talk about, and hemorrhoids are, right up there, so to speak. But we should, because there's 8 million people in the UK right now suffering with piles. If you're one of them like I was, you should speak to Xroid. They're the Harley Street specialists in hemorrhoid treatment. It's a new, fast, gentle, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids, with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Consultation and treatment starts from $9.95. Xroid, be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
At Asda, save 25% on a great range of wines when you mix and match any 6 bottles or more. Bring it home with Asda. Save money, live better.
Selected lines in selected stores, 75 centilitre and 1.5 litre bottles, £4 and above, excludes gift sets, fortified and meal-deal wines, in-store only, excludes Scotland, ends 26th of August 2019, drink aware.
Everyone wants a smooth running home so that they can spend more time enjoying it. The British Gas app allows you to do just that, because with a touch of a finger, you could quickly pay your bill or book in a boiler service, leaving you more time to fire up the barbecue or just relax with a good book. Manage your home account and more all in one place. Download the British Gas app from the App Store or Google Play today.
This summer at Chessington World of Adventures Resort, answer the call of the wild. With over 1,000 of the world's most amazing animals and over 40 of the wildest rides and attractions. Meet the Gruffalo and all your favourite characters at the Gruffalo Summer Party and so much more. Book early and save up to 40% at chessington.com. It's Britain's wildest adventure for all the family.
Welcome back. We've got a mad dash, so we get you ready for the opening bell about 13 minutes from now. We've been talking a lot about retail this morning, given the earnings from Home Depot and Kohl's. TJX is one name we didn't get to.
No.
Which we talk about a lot, in part because there's one right across the street from the New York Stock
Exchange. Yes, and it's a good one, but sometimes I find myself fixing the shelf. Like they'll have the underwear mixed with the socks.
Yeah, it's not exactly the best presentation, but people aren't there for that. They're there for the
prices. And the reason why the prices is because when you're Macy's, again, I didn't mean to offend Macy's. I'm talking about the generic department store. When they say they have too much inventory and they had to sell it, which is what Macy's said on the call, it tends to be bought by this company, but a rare miss in the comps. Now, when they have missed in the comps, David, every time they miss, you had to buy it. And that's what is going to happen today. You're going to get a rare miss, then the then the considered analysts will come out and recommend this stock. So wait 24 hours and then buy it.
And then buy it.
Yeah, because it's what always happens.
So unlike mall-based retail, you think this has a brighter future?
Off-price does poorly when we think for a day that the economy's better. So off-price goes down today. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. By the way, Michelle Goss, which is how you pronounce GASS, the CEO, just now said some things about tariffs on Kohl's. And what you never want to hear is the word tariff when it comes to retail, except for when it says we plan for it. So anyway, when you hear tariffs, again, anything that says that the merchandise got too expensive, you buy TJX. Now, David, a lot of people like you are concerned. Is this the beginning of a head and shoulders pattern? You know what? I don't care. Not unlike Marshall Sam Gerard in the future. But this is a quarter that is surprising to people because TJX has been a clock-set quarter, as David Berman, your friend, often talks about. It is the great American retailer. Home Goods looks like maybe a little problematic.
You forget Home Goods, of course.
Have you been when you go to your Home Goods, David? Have you ever noticed that you go there for Thanksgiving and they're all by the end of Halloween, all the Thanksgiving stuff's gone? So what do you do? Where do you go?
I don't go anywhere. Stay home. Don't go anywhere.
Do you host Thanksgiving?
Sometimes
it's a holiday.
Sometimes
turkeys.
We do. Yeah.
We have not gone beyond turkey yet, but there's a bunch of guys who recommended Beyond Meat.
No way.
What? Why you don't you like chemicals?
What are they going to have?
Better living through chemistry. Beyond Meat.
Another new slurry to replace turkey. All right, we've got a lot more to come. By the way, Kyle Bass, Heyman Capital, is going to join us, give us his perspective on that ongoing situation.
Beyond Bass.
Yeah, U.S.-China trade. Let's give you one more look at futures. We open for trading right here at the NYSE 10 minutes from now. Don't miss it. A lot more Squawk in the Street.
Dear Tech. This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Everyone wants a smooth running home so that they can spend more time enjoying it. The British Gas app allows you to do just that, Because with the touch of a finger, you could quickly pay your bill or book in a boiler service, leaving you more time to fire up the barbecue or just relax with a good book. Manage your home account and more all in one place. Download the British Gas app from the App Store or Google Play today.
In a world where everyone's on the move, streaming monster movies and mega box sets will gobble up the gigabytes on your mobile in no time. What you need is more data. Tons of it. Unlimited data on a new SIM-only deal from Carphone Warehouse. Unlimited data from a minuscule £23 a month. You want the world? You got it, baby. Pull a switcheroo at Carphone Warehouse. Vodafone 12-month contracts only ends 31st of December. T's and C's apply.
With a welcome bonus from the no annual fee British Airways American Express credit card, your next getaway's not far away. So whether it's welcome to drifting down the canals of Amsterdam or bienvenue to midnight strolls in Paris, say welcome to a European adventure. Spend £1,000 in your first 3 months of card membership and get £5,000 bonus Avios. That's enough to get away to Europe sooner. Search BA Amex to find out more. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Applicants must be 18 years or older, subject to approval. Terms, taxes, fees and carrier charges apply.
It had been 22 years since Dan and Tom last met, since they shared a desk in maths and played football together at lunchtime. 22 years with nothing more than a few Christmas cards and an online friend request to show for it. A 21st century eulogy for the loss of a once great friendship. Until a chance meeting outside the corner shop. On a morning they both decided to ditch the car and walk instead. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Awfully close to closing out last week's sell-off declines, but we're still down 2% for the month, and futures have been eroding really in the last half hour. Opening bell in about 7.5 minutes.
September 19th, Vice President Mike Pence live at the Delivering Alpha Conference. Just one of the influential names at the most important investor event of the year.
We really raised our game last season, but for sure, you have to keep moving, keep pushing, which is why we've just signed an amazing deal to strengthen the team.
Can you confirm the name?
Of course, Mercedes-Benz Vito. Very versatile, hardworking team player. Exactly what you need to get to the next level.
Raise your game with unmissable offers on all Mercedes-Benz Vitos. Hurry, deadline day is August 31st. Search Mercedes-Benz Vito.
We spoke to the Cans from Sly about what BT's new complete Wi-Fi brings to their busy house.
Now the Wi-Fi literally does reach every corner of the house. We have 11 people that all use the Wi-Fi for different things, and the Wi-Fi disc has helped that so much.
The harmony in the house has improved 10 or 20-fold.
The Cans are 11 more happy BT customers with complete Wi-Fi that guarantees a Wi-Fi signal in every room.
Up to 3 discs to guarantee Wi-Fi or £20 off your bill. Terms apply.
Oh boy, I've seen some doozies. Things like being too conservative, ignoring the long-term erosion of your wealth from inflation, or trying to time the market. And if you're retired or close to being, you may not have enough time to recover. So use your noodle and call for our free guide. 13 retirement investment blunders to avoid. Explains how even the most well-intentioned people may stumble on the road to retirement. With errors like working with an advisor who may not be a fiduciary, or getting stuck with annuities, or with mutual funds that have nosebleed level fees.
Fisher Investments has helped thousands of people avoid regrets and achieve a comfortable retirement. Call 1-800-353-5566 for your free guide. And as a bonus, we'll send you our stock market outlook, a timely assessment on where the market goes from here, also free.
If you have $500,000 or more to invest, you could achieve your investment goals without becoming your own worst enemy.
Call 1-800-353-5566.
This is the box that started it all. The box that changed how people buy mattresses forever. This is the mattress so comfortable, people can't stop giving it 5 stars. This is Casper, the company bringing bedtime back to millions of happy sleepers, one box at a time. Try America's #1 rated mattress for 100 nights, risk-free. Unbox better sleep at Casper.com.
You're watching CNBC Squawk on the Street, live from the financial capital of the world. The opening bell in just under 5 minutes. Another busy Tuesday, coming off of the best 2-day gain for the major averages since the beginning of June. Gives you a sense of how squirrely August has been. In the meantime, U.S. Steel is planning temporary layoffs for hundreds of workers at a Michigan plant. The company will halt production at its facility due to lower steel prices and softening demand. U.S. Steel says the layoffs could last beyond 6 months and impact nearly every area of the Great Lakes facility. Just last week at a rally in Pennsylvania, the president said the steel industry was thriving.
Pennsylvania Steel raised the skyscrapers that built our cities. And by the way, steel was dead. Your business was dead. Okay? I don't want to be overly crude. Your business was dead. And I put a little thing called a 25% tariff on all of the dumped steel all over the country. And now your business is thriving.
Obviously, we know what's happened to the share price of most steel producers.
Yeah, the last couple months, actually, there's been a turn up in price, which is good. But remember, where does steel go? It goes into auto, and auto is just not strong. So it really didn't matter. You can put tariffs on anything. You can keep steel from being dumped. But if the actual end market isn't strong, then it really doesn't matter what the president does. You can't get autos to go up to 19 million if they're stuck at 17. So U.S. Steel's doing. U.S. Steel is hostage to the economy, and construction turning down a little bit, according to the banks I talked to. It's different. It's just not great.
Mentioning U.S. Steel has a market cap of $2.1 billion.
How much?
$2.1 billion.
Well, can't do.
Beyond Meat is how much bigger than Beyond?
David, I mean, Beyond Meat, Beyond Meat is beyond. Yeah, right. I mean, let's not it's impossible meat. The IMF force. I mean, the whole thing is real.
David makes a good point because Beyond Meat's up in the pre-market. Got an upgrade today out of JP Morgan, upgrading to overweight, citing potential for the company to acquire new customers, continued strength in measured data and valuation. They also take Campbell's to neutral from underweight.
Yeah, you can't have Campbell's as a sell because the management there, that used to be from Pinnacle, doing a pretty good job. I know Dan Loeb in there agitating, but management's
not agitating any longer.
They got a good management.
Yeah, now they've got
peace, and like Keurig's got a good management. Gamgore, Keurig's doing quite well. Keurig Dr. Pepper. Look, I get the bull case Beyond Meat, which is that it is the new way. I mean, there's really an interesting line in that recommendation that food services are going to start using Beyond Meat. So you go to your say CNBC cafeteria, and you say, "Look, I don't want dead cow methane. I'd like some chemicals, please."
Yeah, I want a pea substrate slurry.
Yes, with some salt. I'd like a box of Morton salt.
Sodium.
Yeah, I'd like a box of Morton salt with my beef, please. My faux beef. No, it's like, look, they have a product that people like. And there's no accounting for taste, David.
As we're talking, guys, Home Depot's calls going on.
Yep.
Lumber price deflation negatively impacted comps by about $340 million, fair amount. Also, took advantage of an attractive interest rate, raised $1.4 billion in long-term debt.
Well, I mean, they'll buy back a lot of stock. It's what a juggernaut. I mean, you can't bet against them. One that I have to rely again on my partner, Carl. The Disney whistleblower is getting a lot of attention, David.
And what am I supposed to make of that?
I don't.
What is it even? A lot of attention?
Well, the stock's down big.
Is it?
No, I mentioned it.
No.
Last night you said.
Story.
I mean, buck and a half.
Last night you said I'm with Iger.
Yes, I am with Iger. Now they use the billions of dollars number. I mean, they have auditors. They have very powerful board. I think the idea that they have systematically overstated their earnings was a little. You put it in the GE category, and look, GE has done, I think, what they have to do. But the idea that Disney, now, I recoiled from that charge. David?
I agree.
You do? I had to browbeat him into saying something that was meant to be the ultimate softball, that was supposed to be hit out of the park like home run derby. No, you couldn't give it to me.
I couldn't. I never do.
No,
nor will I.
Let's get the opening bell here. S&P at the bottom of your screen at the big board this morning. As we take a look at who's ringing the bell, it's Aware Asset Management as they celebrate the launch of their new ETF. The NASDAQ, it's European paper and packaging producer Metza board. You guys mentioning Disney and media. A lot of news in Apple. Not only does the card go live today for U.S. consumers, FT says they're going to spend $6 billion in content. That's not as much as Netflix is 15, but
that's a big number.
It's a big number.
It's true. I don't know that it is true, but I mean, to go from sort of not quite zero, but a low number to 6, it's an awfully big ramp in a very short amount of time. It takes a while to sort of get everything moving. I don't know. That number seems awfully high.
That's a very big number. By the way, I agree with that. But did you see that Apple, you get the 3% on Uber? People have been saying, there was a very critical review of the Apple Card the other day saying, well, look, they don't get you air miles, they don't get you big discounts. But the fact that they're in there with Uber does matter to me at 3%. I bought something using the Apple Card this weekend. I got my 3% back. I felt great.
You felt good about it?
I felt not good. I felt great about it. How do you think you get rich in this country?
3%. That's how you get rich?
Yeah.
I thought it was you start with a lot more and then you work
go down?
Yeah.
You have MasterCard, President? MasterCard is at the crux of so much right now. Whether they really have cryptocurrency, they may have the best read on the credit card, maybe even better than Goldman. Remember, it's Goldman and Apple, MasterCard. The thing that everyone's excited about with the credit card for Apple is no cost of acquisition because you already have it, you get your wallet. What people are concerned about is it more than just Apple Pay? Will there be people who didn't use it before or will just be in your so-called wallet? Is it a magnesium card? The magnesium is
Yes.
We had a very good doc on last night for Firefest.
Oh, we had they did the American Greed.
Yeah,
they did an American Greed on. Yeah,
but will it be used? I mean, I have it here, the Apple Card. I've got. I like it, but then again, I am an Apple junkie. I admit that I'm not the right candidate. I don't use credit cards. I don't use.
Given where interest rates are versus credit card rates, do you think credit card rates are
way too high?
They're too high, right?
Yeah. Do you know what the credit card rate is in Mexico right now?
No.
41%.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, but their rates are at 8, right? Their interest rates are.
Mexico's had. We don't talk enough about Mexico. They've had some real trouble lately, and it is palpable how difficult the government is right now. There's a very good article today about natural gas in the Wall Street Journal. How they have a pipe. They need they're short natural gas. Mexico's got some of the biggest reserves. Mexico and Venezuela have huge reserves. And what?
Just went from credit card rates to
oil reserves?
One.
Did I ever?
I was still going to talk about. I mean, do you know why all the credit card companies are in North Dakota? Isn't that where they are?
I thought it was call centers.
It's usury
because
Carson Wentz. Every other state has usury laws.
Carson Wentz.
That prevents you from having 16% interest rates.
Usury laws.
Yes,
that's good.
That's why.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I just learned something.
Keep that in mind.
That's okay.
All right.
How about Home Depot being the largest contributor? It's the one where the headlines came out and you just wanted to throw up, and then it turns out it's fine, and everything else is kind of down, including Nvidia. My dog's getting spanked.
We got one deal that we should talk about this morning.
Elanco?
Yeah.
I'm all over that.
Which, you're all about the humanization of pets.
Yes, I am.
It's been a key theme of yours, and a good one, by the way.
Thank you.
I've talked a lot about Bayer. Yes, I know some people like to call it Bayer here. They call it Bayer in Germany. It's, of course, the enormous chemical company, but Monsanto wishes it hadn't. I think we can safely say that, dealing with all that Roundup litigation. But they had committed to certain asset sales, and this is one of them. May have happened a bit faster than people had anticipated, but it makes Elanco one of the largest providers of, in fact, the second largest animal health leader is what they're talking about right now. Deal itself is both cash and stock. They're going to finance $5.32 billion that they're going to pay to Bayer, and then they're also going to be issuing I think it's 68 million shares as well. So Bayer will be an owner as well, significant owner of Elanco. It's going to take them to 5 times leverage. Now, they say they're going to get down to as little as 3 times, given the cash flow characteristics of the company once the deal is done by 2022. But that's pretty levered, 5 times.
really levered.
Although many investors argue you should be more levered, particularly in an environment like this, although others would say, well, what if a recession happens? People may spend less on their pets, and you'd be in some trouble.
And that's
They're going to 5
historically not
times.
true. Remember, historically, it's not true.
Right.
They do not cut back when
That's like the last on the list to go. Right.
And you're getting more. That makes the Elanco balance for pet spend better. And so I like this more. It does help the company, which has been a laggard. Zoetis has been on fire. Zoetis is at the forefront of pretty much everything involving both livestock. I mean, when you talk about the terrible swine flu epidemic, and they're trying to solve that in China, they don't have it, but they have fantastic pet. The pet margins are extraordinary, which is why I've been recommending IDEX Labs forever. I wonder, will pets eat Beyond Meat? They like regular meat.
Will pets eat Beyond Meat?
Do you know what people don't talk? Bruce Linton was on this morning, walking the street. He was fired, and one of the categories that people have really embraced, dog edibles.
Dog edibles.
Yeah, because we have
Cannabis
nothing
for your dog.
We have nothing. Oh man, my dog walks. My dog is a stoner.
Is he?
Oh yeah. Jeez. But they have arthritis. Dogs have arthritis, and there's some things for them, but nothing like edibles. You should see the way dogs get around after they have it. No THC.
It's not psychoactive, right? It's CBD. But you said that your dog jumps up on the bed now with more ease than ever. Because of the
NVIDIA
CBD.
tried to jump up the other day and didn't make it, so I pulled out the CBD. Half hour later, the dog's jumping right on the bed. NVIDIA's got game.
So you should try it. Maybe you can jump on the bed too.
David, it's not legal in my area unless you buy it from. You can buy, there's some CBD that you can buy.
Wouldn't you like to be able to jump high?
I jump high with spiked seltzer. Truly. He probably hasn't even had Truly yet. Don't get the lime. It's just horrible. You haven't had Truly yet?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
He doesn't know. How about Raw Claw? He doesn't even know Truly. And you are really
I'm an embarrassment.
White Claw? You don't know White Claw? Some of the best spiked seltzer there is, but I'm a Truly guy. You gotta hang out with millennials.
Yes.
Do I have to?
Yes, because otherwise you're stuck going to, I don't know, the mall. They don't go to the mall. They don't go to JCPenney.
Although it reminds me, once again, Jim, you got a barbell of Home Depot, one of the best names in the S&P today, and TJX, the worst.
Yeah, I think TJX, you want to buy TJX after some guys lower the price targets tomorrow. Look, there's a lot of profit taking. Yeah, Estee Lauder was an amazing quarter, and some guys coming in right now. Estee Lauder, by the way, used to be 30% American. They've cut that down to 13 because America is not as good a market as China. They breakthrough numbers Israel, breakthrough numbers in Russia.
13%. North America, 13%.
Because they knew. Insta. Fabrizio Freda, the CEO, spends a lot of time with young influencers in China, actually talking to young people to see what they want, because that is a great growth market. Can you imagine sitting down with youngsters talking about how to look better?
Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to
isn't
do.
That smart?
If you're leading
they
a
love
business.
Tom Ford, by the way. The Tom Ford, but remember, Tom Ford's also kind of scatological. I don't know if you've seen how Tom Ford goes out on a limb.
I haven't.
Jim, Netflix has only been below 300 a handful of times this year, but it's $1.50 away. You think this is a pressure from the pricing on Apple? We think reports indicate $9.99 a month going live in November. It'd be more expensive than Disney Plus.
Is $6.99, or even then obviously the 3 services as well that Disney's going to offer at a discounted price of almost 30% to the list. What I come back to is just how much money. I don't know if the $6 billion number is correct or not, but regardless, how much money is being spent on content by all of these companies.
And you know,
Hulu, Amazon, Netflix.
Do you know who reacted?
The Viacom-CBS combination, which is going to have to increase spending for direct.
About his contract.
Did well. You got to hand it to him. He did well, and I know him.
The sums of money that are paid to CEOs and upper management in the entertainment and media business is stunning.
You sound like Elizabeth Warren.
Well, in this case, she'd be right, don't you think?
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm neutral in politics.
It makes your contract look like nothing, my friend. Zippity dippity doo dah. That's what you got versus the bosses.
I was going to talk about I was going to talk about how good Roku is, but now
The CFO at a media company you don't even know makes multiples of what you do.
Do you think I'm happy about that?
You shouldn't be.
Do you think
You're a lot
that's
more
right?
valuable.
You think I think that's right?
No, it's not right.
But you know, I
don't know, right or wrong.
What am I,
it is.
What am I,
Philippe
Trotsky?
Damon.
What, I'm Trotsky?
Philippe Damon, a man who you could argue.
Hey, Ron
Viacom
Johnson was on yesterday. How did he
with
do?
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay, so I don't make as much money. I should make more money. I'm going to call my agent right here. I'm calling my agent right now. I have him on speed dial. It is outrageous.
And so, yes, Viacom is going to pay their CEO well. Mr. Backish, Ianello is staying on.
That was his year.
He'll get his $70 million when he leaves Ianello, which could be fairly soon. We'll see.
I can't take it.
And you and I sit here. I mean, and I make fractions of what you do. So think how I feel.
I'm a loser. I'm not what I appear to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, Backish is going to make 55% more this coming year than he made last year. And I saw one table that puts him now, he will be in the top 20 or so paid S&P CEOs.
Well, and when you look at the list, of course, you will see oftentimes media CEOs amongst the top. David Zaslav certainly is there.
Does Backish like his helmet? Will he wear his
helmet? And by the way,
helmet?
our company's, say again?
His helmet. I'd say reference Antonio Brown. You're not calling me Antonio
yes,
Brown?
I am actually. That I'm aware of.
I'm appalled at how little I make. I am appalled.
And you work a lot.
I work my ass off.
I
was up at 3:30 this morning working.
Harder than pretty much
I was working at
3:30.
I was reading again how bad the Canopy Growth conference call was at 3:30 in the morning.
You read the J.C. Penney call.
Yes, I sure did.
Call? Why?
Why? Because of the dollar. Because it's in the
bad
dollar
guys
store.
wake up at 5:30.
That's right. I get up earlier than the bad guys, but I am underpaid versus the bad. CFOs make more money than I do.
Oh my God!
How is that possible?
You know what? I'm going to go through the
Pencil
proxies.
people?
We're going to go through the proxies, and I'm going to show you how much the top employees at many of these media companies make.
Thank heaven
It's
my
gonna
wife
make
doesn't
you
work,
happy.
doesn't watch.
You're going to love it.
Guys, we're 50 points or so once again from 26,000 and 8 points above 2,900. Let's get to Bob Bassani. Hey, Bob.
Hello, Carl. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Yields down, stocks down. I don't know when we're going to break this pattern, but it's been happening with a dulling regularity over the last couple of weeks. And usually when the yields are down, cyclicals tend to be on the weak side. That's what's happening. Your banks are down, semiconductors, transports. This is a really regular pattern. We're seeing energy, materials, all a little bit on the weak side. We've had a nice rally, though, since the bottom. What was it, last Thursday? The Dow, we pointed out yesterday, Dow moved. This was the bottom on Thursday. That's 800 points or so for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Nice move that we've had overall. And what's it based on? Frankly, it's just based on a lot of hope. So at least as far as I can see, you can see this, what we've been getting here. The hope for stimulus from Germany, the hope for more stimulus from China, the hope of this endless U.S.-China trade agreement eventually materializing in some form or another. And most importantly, short-term, the hopes that the Fed is going to send very dovish signals at Jackson Hole, which, by the way, is an academic conference, not designed for people to stand on the driveway and tell everybody, oh, don't worry, folks, we're going to be whatever you want. We'll be as loose as we have to be. So it seems like expectations are very high, short-term, particularly for Jackson Hole. Markets have been up recently, so it seems to me risk is a little more to the downside, that we could be disappointed at Jackson Hole and what's going on over there. In the meantime, we've had this cyclical rally that's been going on in the last few days as the yields have come up a little bit here. So energy stocks, financials, technologies, industrials, materials. Here's all your cyclical group. This is since the bottom on Thursday. I'm talking really short term here. They've all had the rally. So what overall has been going on elsewhere? I think it's important just to take a look at some of the retail numbers. I know Jim's been talking about this recently, but we've seen Home Depot, Kohl's, TJX. The good news is they've all affirmed their full year guidance, and that's the single most important metric. Kohl's comps missed, TJX's numbers, their comps and sales missed on this particular quarter. But I want to point out the power of buybacks once again. I concentrate a lot on this because it really does make a difference. Kohl's is one of the big buyback monsters of all time. So if you look at their numbers here, they had $1.55. The consensus was $1.53. And you say, well, that's great. They beat by 2 cents. But in fact, because they've been such active share buyback companies, 2 cents of this was because they were buying back stock aggressively. So actually, if you discount that, they're in line. Now, does this make this less valid because it's a buyback? No. But if you're interested in really growing your earnings by actually sales and business improving rather than financial engineering, it does matter. Kohl's is one of the great buyback monsters of all time. If you take a look in the last 8 or 9 years, and I tend to go back to 2010 because that's when the buybacks really started exploding, 2010 and 2011. So you look here, They had over 300 million shares outstanding in 2010, and look what they're down to here. They've about half of that. They've got about 160 million. That's a reduction in the share count of 47% in 9 years. What does that mean? It means that all other things being equal, all of the numbers being equal, their earnings are 47% better than they were in 2010 just because of the buybacks. Forget about whether they actually had any sales increases or did anything to overall improve their business. And again, it doesn't mean it's not valid. Of course the numbers are valid. Share buybacks are perfectly valid. But for people who are more interested in trying to figure out ways to improve sales and business and things like that, those kinds of metrics do matter. Some people call this financial engineering, and call it whatever you want. It's a very, very important part of Kohl's, as well as many other companies' earnings picture today. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Bob Pisani. Let's get to the bond pits as well. Rick Santelli at the CME in Chicago. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Carl. You know, yesterday's bounce in yields, not only here but globally, was very significant after last week's Wednesdays and Thursdays global drop. But it was very short-lived, and that's making traders a bit apprehensive showing up in stocks. Look at a 1 week of 10s. Now, here's what's interesting. If you look at last week, we had an intraday low of 147, but the low close for this cycle is 153. And here we sit, just a basis point or two above that. If you look at a 2-day of 30s, similar. You know, last week they had an intraday low of 191. They had their low close forever and a day at 197. Here we sit at 203. And maybe more symbolically, yesterday's failure to close above what had been for many years the all-time low yield close of 210 after getting above it intraday, a big disappointment from a technical standpoint. Boons also back into the minus 70s. Look at 1 week of Boons. Everybody moves together. The only thing that separates us is scale. If you look at a 1 week of the dollar index, though, it continues its staircase higher, albeit it's compressing a bit. We keep striving to take out the 27-month high that's right around 98.5, and it's not far away, but it has been not far away for many sessions. So it's starting to consolidate, but at the very upper end of a 27-month range. And finally, everything going on with trade, although we haven't had any tweets lately, look at the dollar versus the yuan. Here we are again, getting very close to all-time, well, not all-time, going back to 2007 levels that we haven't seen with regard to 7. We want to pay very close attention to this move. Carl, David, Jim, back to you.
All right, Rick, thank you very much. Good stuff, Rick Santelli. Meantime, the chairman of the FTC speaking out about Facebook. Joseph Simon's telling the FT that the company's plan to merge WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram could hamper any plans to break up the social media giant. He told the paper, quote, if they're maintaining separate business structures and infrastructure, it's much easier to have a divestiture in that circumstance than in where they're completely enmeshed and all the eggs are scrambled. This comes as the Journal's reporting a group of states are preparing to move forward with a joint antitrust investigation of big tech. This FTC chair has been making some comments with increasing frequency.
Yeah, look, I think that when I read the state's attorney general, I mean, they're just tag-alongs, but the FTC has gotten so aggressive. It's hard to believe that agency has just come to the fore. They're just everywhere, and they're tough.
Yeah, I mean, there's the long-term nature of these investigations can't be emphasized enough.
I know.
And so you wonder what the discount will be on the share prices short term, if any.
Yeah.
Based on an outcome that's uncertain and that is a long way away. Right. But could result if it were, fines split up of the companies. Okay, and then some would argue, well, that actually would be beneficial.
The SOTP.
As a shareholder.
I think Alphabet's a great company. Sometimes I wonder whether, Waymo needs to be there, split off Waymo. Look, the curve may be inverting soon. We're back to that thinking, and it's causing the market to have
down almost 100. When we come back, Hong Kong and trade tensions between China and the U.S. Kyle Bass of Heyman Capital will offer his perspective on those issues as the Secretary of State made comments on Squawk earlier today. We're back in a moment.
The Bond Report.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Live big and spend less on the brands you adore. And dine by the waterside. Who could want more? Lap up the savings as much as the view. With Ted Baker, Hackett, Nike and Coach too. Lock Fine and Five Guys make it a date. You can shop, meet and eat every weekday till late. So sit back, unwind and let style lead the way. And give yourself a different day at Gunwharf Quays. Waterfront outlet shopping.
With a welcome bonus from the no annual fee British Airways American Express credit card, your next getaway's not far away. So whether it's welcome to drifting down the canals of Amsterdam or bienvenue to midnight strolls in Paris, say welcome to a European adventure. Spend £1,000 in your first 3 months of card membership and get 5,000 bonus Avios. That's enough to get away to Europe sooner. Search BA Amex to find out more. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Applicants must be 18 years or older, subject to approval. Terms, taxes, fees and carrier charges apply.
A Vauxhall test drive? There is absolutely no reason not to. With a free Amazon Alexa-enabled device when you take a test drive, whether you buy a car or not, you might just change your mind. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. T's and C's and exclusions apply, subject to availability, participating retailers. Test drive must be completed by 9th of September and gift claim by 13th of September 2019. No purchase necessary. See vauxhall.co.uk/test drive T's and C's. Search Vauxhall Test Drive.
It had been 22 years since Dan and Tom last met, since they shared a desk in maths and played football together at lunchtime. 22 years with nothing more than a few Christmas cards and an online friend request to show for it. A 21st century eulogy for the loss of a once great friendship. Until a chance meeting outside the corner shop. On a morning they both decided to ditch the car and walk instead. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Alan, her next door's off again to a coastal holiday home, no doubt. Since when did she splash the cash? She's not even forked out on a bag for life.
It's never been more affordable to buy a Haven holiday home. And if you buy now, your 2019 site fees are on us. Search Home is Haven. Valid on all new customer sales made by 1st of September 2019. For full terms and conditions, visit haven.com/free site fees. Haven, a breath of fresh air.
As Jim said on Twitter a moment ago, yield curve jitters rising again. That's reason breadth is no good. Dow's only down 100 points, though. We're back in a minute.
Whether she's dreaming of college nearby.
Oh no. 1 kebab, 4 cabs, 3 karaoke booths. But really?
You can't always recall what you spent on a night out. But you could map the location of those transactions on our mobile banking app. Feel in control every day. Lloyds Bank, by your side. Not available for every transaction. T's and C's apply.
TuneIn puts you on the sideline for the 2019 college football season free all year long. With college football on TuneIn, hear the home and away call for more than 140 schools live. Regular season matchups and rivalry games. Conference championships and bowl games. The college football playoff.
The throw, he steps up, he's going deep down the right side. Andrews.
You can listen to it all for free.
The end zone, touchdown.
At home, on campus, or on the road, hear the excitement and pageantry of college football all season long free on TuneIn.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow @TuneIn and always be in the know.
The NFL is back on TuneIn.
Throws a ball backside of the end zone, deflected and caught. Touchdown.
With the NFL on TuneIn Premium, hear the home call of every game live all season long. The show begins throughout the month of August with live coverage of every preseason matchup on the schedule. Then, as training camps come to a close, be sure to mark your calendars for NFL Kickoff Weekend, featuring the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears on September 5th. At home or on the go, hear every game of your NFL team on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Soundtrack your summer with the biggest songs climbing the charts and cranking through your car stereo with the windows down on country roads. Stay up to date with the hottest songs in country. Discover the biggest tunes from artists like Carrie Underwood.
Got a pontoon boat with a Yamaha.
Luke Bryan.
Yeah, birds
sneak bees and ice needs whiskey.
Thomas Rhett, and many more on Country Roads.
Look what God gave us.
Your summer soundtrack is here. Search Country Roads to start listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Time for Jim and Stuff Trading.
4 months ago, Medtronic had a conference call, and people felt that Omar Ishrak did not do that good a job, MDT. I felt that, holy cow, this company, anytime you rule it out, it's a very big mistake. They have a lot of good medical devices. And the devices, by the way, have been much stronger than the pharma stocks. Look at this. And Omar is just terrific. He's very soft-spoken. He does a great job. They have a lot of new products. It is going higher.
Secular growth story in an aging country.
Yeah, exactly. It's heart valve. Not unlike Edwards Life Sciences, where you don't have to crack the chest. You don't have to crack it open. Boom. Medtronic has some great devices. Really great.
What about the show tonight?
I have a stock that many people don't understand what it does, but they buy it anyway, and it follows you all over the internet. And it says, "I'm going to tell you that you're a badass coder." That's the hint. Don't do badass coder in your. Don't Google it because it's going to. What, cursing?
Yes.
I mean, that's their signature statement. If you type in badass coder in Google, they're gonna follow you everywhere.
O'Rourke, like cursing left and right.
I don't mind. I mean, I like it.
I'm sorry.
It's real.
I don't think coal should be down that much.
And I don't think ass should be a curse word.
I'm just telling you that the company uses that name in its. You'll be followed forever by them if you type that in.
Got it.
Okay.
We'll see you tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
6 p.m. Mad Money. Don't miss it. When we come back, Kyle Bass of Heyman Capital. We're down 80.
For thousands of years.
Hemorrhoids. You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere. Because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialize in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
It had been 22 years since Dan and Tom last met, since they shared a desk in maths and played football together at lunchtime. 22 years with nothing more than a few Christmas cards and an online friend request to show for it. A 21st century eulogy for the loss of a once great friendship. Until a chance meeting outside the corner shop. On a morning, they both decided to ditch the car and walk instead. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
If your old faithful fridge freezer is broken or on the blink again, relax. At AO, we have a huge range jam-packed with the latest technology to keep your weekly favourites fresher than ever. Plus, there's great deals on top brands like Hisense, LG and Whirlpool, with finance options available. AO.com, the online electrical store. AO! Let's go! Credit is subject to status. Must be over 18. AO Retail Limited is a broker and not a lender. Credit is provided by Secure Trust Bank PLC, trading as V12 Retail Finance.
Quick, put these tights on and grease yourself up.
Tights, grease? What, why?
It's time for your match.
What are you on about? Who's he?
The heavyweight champion of the world, Jack Hammer Johnson. You asked me to book you a fight.
A flight? I wanted you to get me a flight.
Oh. Good luck. Should have gone to Specsavers for £400 off selected hearing aids. Offer ends 30th of September. Ask in store for details.
Tuesday morning. Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. I'm Carl Quintanilla with Sarah Eisen and David Faber at the New York Stock Exchange. Market down about 85 points here, juggling a bunch of different things, including an eye on the fixed income markets, Home Depot, Kohl's, and a lot more.
Our roadmap for the hour, though, begins with stocks sliding, stopping a three-day rally for the Dow and the S&P. How to play the markets amid this recent volatility.
That retail roundup, Kohl's, Home Depot, TJX, all reporting results. We'll go through the numbers and tell you what they're signaling about the state of the consumer.
And a bit later, Heyman Capital's Kyle Bass going to join us right here on set. We'll talk, of course, about China trade relations, global markets, and see what else he's got on his mind.
Maybe the Hong Kong dollar peg?
Sure, why not? You can ask about that.
We'll begin with the markets, though. As we mentioned, moving lower. Dow and S&P 500 in the middle of a three-day win streak amid this market uncertainty. Earlier on Squawk Box, investor Ron Barron discussed why he's not worried about the recent sell-off. Listen.
My bottom line of it is that when you think about all the developments that are taking place and everyone is worried about them, it doesn't mean a lot in the long term. We invest in growth stocks for the long term and don't worry about all these things that everyone that you read about or you hear on television every day. And that's what's given us this good performance.
Ron Barron, they're not too worried. Guys, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch put out a survey where they asked some of their investor clients about whether we were heading into recession. It was really a 50-50 response rate. A majority of people said 2020, but there were still plenty of optimists who said maybe 2021 or beyond. So I think that it's confusing reading the economic data, reading the market signals like an inverted yield curve, and whether that meant anything given that we kind of flattened out, went higher afterwards, and reading some of the better data and some of the better commentary from companies like Home Depot, which didn't indicate any kind of major weakness in the consumer.
Well, as we said with Jim last hour, did guide their comps down, blaming lumber deflation. And in their words, potential impacts to U.S. consumers arising from recently announced tariffs. But you're right about the yield curve. It's hugely controversial. If Santelli were here, he'd probably say the bigger story is that 30-year and whether it can bust out of this 2% range.
Yeah, I mean, the question is for the bond market, is it a reflection of the easing that has begun from central banks around the world and continuing from the Fed and expectations for Fed Chairman Jay Powell to continue to say easier policy is coming, we can cut rates even more? Or is it a reflection of the fact that the economy is turning and could turn in the next year or so?
Right. Now, there was also a line of thought, Sarah, that we were discussing earlier that says a lot of this move is really technically driven. It's not necessarily about a fundamental or a response to fundamentals, but as much about convexity hedging of mortgages, bank portfolios, variable annuities, and what has been a somewhat illiquid market.
Could be part of it. I mean, I've looked at more of the macro questions right now, which I think come down to the fact that are we still responsive and celebratory about stimulus, whether it's fiscal or monetary, because that's been the theme lately, whether it's coming from China or Germany or the U.S., all the central banks and all the governments are thinking about stimulus. You saw the New York Times article today about the White House looking at the payroll tax cut. The Fed, China also adjusted its rate.
ECB, are they going to buy bank stocks? You name it.
Right. So does the market still respond to this sort of thing, or is it like pushing on a string where lower interest rates don't stimulate a lot of activity or stock market, run-ups like we saw a few years ago?
Meantime, obviously, the U.S. consumer is key in all of this. So retailers like Home Depot, Kohl's, and TJX have reported results today. Our Courtney Reagan's going to run down some of those numbers. Hey, Court.
Hi, Carl. So some weaker than expected retail results this morning, but with some varied reasons. Home Depot and Kohl's both beat earnings. TJX earnings were in line. All three, though, missing expectations for revenues and comparable sales. So let's talk about Home Depot first. Home Depot's comparable sales grew 3%. The street had expected 3.5%. So the big reason for the sales weakness is continued deflation in lumber. It's worth about $340 million in this quarter. And on the call, the company gave the example that a 4x8 piece of OSB lumber sold for an average of $7.60 during the quarter. That's more than 50% less than the same price last year and down further from the price in the first quarter. So lumber's often a starting point for projects. So that's why it's followed so closely and is so important. Home Depot also cutting its full year sales guidance as it expects lumber depreciation to continue and wants to be prudent about the impact that new tariffs will have on the consumer overall, not just in its business. Though CFO Carol Tomei says there hasn't been an impact that Home Depot can see so far to consumers from the tariffs. Now, Kohl's comparable sales fell 2.9%. The Street had forecast a drop of 2.5%. Unseasonably cool and wet weather early in the quarter, that's what hurt sales of spring goods. But CEO Michelle Goss said, look, comps improved during the quarter. They turned positive in the last 6 weeks by 1%. And that positive trend has continued into August with a strong start to back to school. Now, the off-mall department store maintains its annual profit forecast and says it's continuing its sourcing diversity to address the higher cost from tariffs. Now, TJX, the parent of TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Home Goods, it posted comparable sales growth of 2%. Analysts were looking for 3% there. Home Goods was the weakest segment with flat comps. CEO Ernie Herrmann notes that the third quarter is off to a solid start. That conference call, though, has yet to begin, so we don't have a lot of details for TJX just yet. Carl?
All right, Courtney, thank you very much. A lot of information. For more on the state of retail and the consumer, we're joined this morning by J.P. Morgan's retail analyst Chris Horvers and Cowen senior retail analyst John Kernan. Guys, good to see you both.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Chris, why is Home Depot up so much on a day where they did cut their comp guide?
Yeah, I think there's basically three reasons why Home Depot is up. One, expectations were low. We heard as low as a 1 to 2% comp. They did a 3 in the U.S., which is very strong. And the second thing is cyclical, right? Rates are down. We're going to lap existing home sales down high single digits in the back half of the year. It's up 1 to 2% in recent months. So investors saying we've taken the brunt of that decline in existing home sales and affects the business on a lag basis. So we're only going to get better. And the last thing is really the U.S. consumer is the best house on the block in many ways, with core retail sales, while about 120 basis points lower than last year. It's stable in this 3.5% to 4% range. And if that tariff risk is now going away, perhaps we need to get there. And Home Depot is a best-in-class duopoly with an Amazon moat, and investors need to own it.
Yep. Interesting, John. Some pointed to buying conditions out of the UMich survey the other day, where they said big household items were the lowest since 2015. But investors looking past that on this print, at least.
Yeah, sure. I think Chris deals more with the bigger ticket retailers than I do, but I agree with him that the consumer is very strong. The wages picture, the jobs picture is very strong. You do have a very difficult top-line comparison in retail for the fourth quarter. We had our cycle best spending in the fourth quarter last year. So difficult comparison going in the back half of the year. You do have tariff uncertainty, but the consumer is strong. We're seeing that in the winners that are scaling an accelerating rate in retail, like in my space, the Nikes, the Lululemons, the VF Corps. It's the weaker channels of retail, like the department stores that are losing market share and accelerating rate. So consumer strong, but retail is very bifurcated.
What happened, John, with the TJX quarter? Not sort of the standout that we've come to see from TJ Maxx.
Yeah, sure. They comped at 2. People were looking for 3. Softlines retail is in a very competitive space right now. There's a lot of new competition scaling, like resale markets. The department stores are very promotional. There's a lot of inventory. One of the issues we see going in the back half of the year is inventory in softline space is very elevated. It's going to put pressure on margins, and right now TJX is in a competitive fight for market share. Their Home Goods concept also comped flat. That was the worst comp that we've seen out of Home Goods since 2009. So we're also keeping an eye on that category.
What's the reason for that inventory being higher than might have been anticipated?
It's really concentrated in the brick and mortar space, particularly in the department stores. I think they came out of holiday last year, and we saw very robust traffic and sell-throughs. People just bought poorly, and the consumer, weather-wise, did not agree seasonally with the calendar, and ultimately we're in an over-inventory position. And the consumer has a lot of choice right now, whether it's digital, Amazon, the resale market, direct-to-consumer, the e-commerce platforms, a lot of brands. There's just a lot of choice for the consumer right now. There's too much inventory in the brick-and-mortar channel. It's going to get marked down.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, people have been watching rail car loads coming down pretty consistently. The narrative is that these retailers are going to be more than happy to let inventories come down and not putting a lot of trust in the consumer going into holiday. What's wrong with that, if anything?
Well, I think if you look over the arc of 17 and 18, where the consumer was accelerating, a lot of retailers were actually chasing inventory, so they had optimal gross margins. And into this deceleration that we've seen in the first half of 2019, I think a lot of retailers were not prepared for that. And you are seeing this dislocation, as John mentioned, the apparel channel, where there's share shift, and that structural headwind and the movement online is impacting that category the most. I think the risk is, as you look forward, actually, that sales moderated into the back half of the year. And if you recall, December, the consumer basically shut down when that stock market shuttered for about 2 weeks. So the risk is that they could get too lean as you get into November and December. But, in the world of a highly marked down prone category like apparel, that's a long way away. And most of these stocks, until you see that inventory clean up, there'll be a lot of weight on that category.
So, Chris, what's baked in right now in terms of a tariff increase on the remaining $300 billion, which would include apparel and footwear, and has now been punted to December, in terms of the share prices?
Yeah, and so I think it's very dependent on which company and which category you're talking about. Home Depot essentially put 25 basis points of comp risk into the year for the potential tariff. Walmart put something in that number, but better than expected comps that they're seeing the momentum in the business and in earnings, good SG&A control allowed them to again raise for the year and not really lower for the back half of the year. The real risk around tariff, there's some in September, but most of these goods for the holiday are in inventory. They are in retailers' distribution centers. So it's really whether or not the December 15th tariff goes on, and that's when you see heightened apparel, you see heightened electronics. So really the risk around tariffs, I think, is very manageable. We estimate the average retailer will only have to raise prices 5 to 7%, and that's assuming that the vendors don't help them out. So it's really going to be a question of what happens in 2020, because if they don't go away, that's a whole nother discussion. The market's not looking forward to that. And so I think the biggest categories that people are focused on right now is, again, the apparel land. So it's a bit of a pylon between the inventory, the disintermediation of online, and the slower trends in the category.
All right. Two big things that people are struggling to find edge on. Chris, John, fascinating. Good stuff. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we return, Heyman Capital's Kyle Bass will join us here at Post 9 to discuss the latest on China trade tensions, global growth, and much more. Dow's down 54 points. Squawk on the Street. We'll be right back.
Did you know that 4 out of 5 homeowners draw a blank?
There are certain things in life we simply don't talk about. And hemorrhoids are, right up there, so to speak. But we should, because there's 8 million people in the UK right now suffering with piles. If you're one of them, like I was, you should speak to Xroid. They're the Harley Street specialists in hemorrhoid treatment. It's a new, fast, gentle, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids, with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Consultation and treatment starts from $9.95. Xroid, be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
Did you know Currys PC World do business? Saving your business up to 30% with mega deals on computers and printers, electricals, large screen TVs, and even more. Top brands like HP, Microsoft, Epson, Sony. And if you find it cheaper from any major retailer, we'll match it. Get these deals before they're gone. Must end soon. Visit your nearest store or pcworldbusiness.co.uk/megadeals. T's and C's apply. Excludes Inc. and third-party sellers. Visit website for price promise details. Claim within 7 days.
At Asda, save 25% on a great range of wines when you mix and match any 6 bottles or more. Bring it home with Asda. Save money, live better. Selected lines in selected stores. 75 centilitre and 1.5 litre bottles, £4 and above. Excludes gift sets, fortified and meal deal wines. In store only. Excludes Scotland. Ends 26th of August 2019. Drink aware.
This summer at Chessington World of Adventures Resort, answer the call of the wild. With over 1,000 of the world's most amazing animals and over 40 of the wildest rides and attractions. Meet the Gruffalo and all your favourite characters at the Gruffalo Summer Party and so much more. Book early and save up to 40% at Chessington.com. It's Britain's wildest adventure for all the family.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Fears of a global slowdown amid, of course, the trade war with China continue. President Trump says he's, quote, not ready to make a deal. Our next guest agrees. The end of the trade war, he says, nowhere in sight. Joining us now, longtime China watcher, Heyman Capital founder and chief investment officer Kyle Bass. Of course, you have a fund dedicated to, well, being short the currency in Hong Kong and in China to a certain extent, or mostly just Hong Kong.
Well, we're not allowed to talk about funds as per SEC rules, but let's say we focus on the region.
I just think it's important for our viewers to sort of understand it, given you've sort of become a China expert, at least on our air, certainly, and in your various tweets and the way you're communicating in the marketplace. What is your sense right now in terms of the growth rate in China and what is really going on with the Chinese economy?
Well, I think if you just look to the mistake that the Chinese made with Baosheng Bank back in May, prior to May, there was never a concern of credit risk or insolvency risk in the Chinese banking system. And in Baosheng's case, they ended up taking down and nationalizing a bank where they haircut interbank depositors by 30% and commercial depositors by 30%. So deposits started running from, let's say, the small regional banks to the big banks because that all of a sudden credit risk and insolvency risk was brought into the system. So you're seeing China print the slowest GDP growth numbers in 35 years.
Right.
You saw the July data that was amongst the worst we've seen. And now you have the banking system. They've taken down 3 banks since May. And the last one they took down was a few $100 billion. These are sizable banks.
Yeah. Now, you've been talking about, of course, your concerns or your belief that the credit system, for lack of a better term, in China is going to potentially crack at some point. Do you feel like this is a reflection somehow that they're getting closer to that? It always seems as if the Chinese have a way, whether it's lowering rates, whether it's changing the way commercial lenders set interest rate for loans, of figuring out a way to sort of set the bar at a different level.
Right. I think you're right. And only the Chinese know when this thing's going to go. But, yeah, the way you think about it is if you're as levered as they are, if you have as many assets spinning on plates as they do, and a few plates start falling, it's going to be difficult to keep all the other plates from falling. And I feel like you're starting to see some plates fall with their banks.
And yet it doesn't appear leadership seems particularly concerned in terms of at least trying to enter into significant discussions to get a trade deal hammered out that conceivably would benefit the economy.
Yeah, I think they're focused on waiting Trump out. And I think, look, we've been talking to the Chinese about trade since January of 2018. Look, we're in August of 2019 and we're still talking away. And so I think their MO is to try to wait Trump out and hope someone that's more pro-China comes in 2020. And I think, truthfully, Trump's political calculus is just to keep talking. If he does a deal that's too easy, he'll be attacked from the right. If he does a deal that's entirely too difficult, they won't sign it. And so I think he'll get attacked from the right and the left if he actually does a deal with China. So I think
there does seem to be some unanimity politically on this issue, actually, interestingly.
There is.
Yeah.
And you look, the presidential candidates like Warren and then even the Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer and a few others have outflanked Trump to the right on China. And they've really stepped into the human rights issue in Hong Kong and said we need to act in helping them preserve freedom and democracy and or forcing the Chinese to live up to another agreement they signed and have reneged on
of course,
with the UK in 1984.
You just brought up Hong Kong. So, I mean, the situation appears to be a little more stable than the last time I spoke to you a few weeks ago. The currency has barely budged despite all the options bets and bets like yours against it. So do you still feel like this is sort of the spark that could ignite a bigger fire in China and in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think the Chinese view Hong Kong in a very different way than we do. We know it's their financial center. We know it's where they raise all their dollars. But the Chinese are more interested in their absolute control and having a popular uprising threatening the legitimacy of the Communist Party. So unlike in the U.S., the Chinese can think in non-economic terms, and they think in terms of power. And so I think when you look at 11 weeks of protests, and it's rumored that or estimated that 1.7 million people protested along with our friend Brian Sullivan in the rain this weekend. You've had 11 weeks of protests. The Chinese are boxed in. So I think it's a really important time to think about if you were in Hong Kong and you ran a business, would you be investing more CapEx in your business today? Would you be moving family members to Hong Kong or would they be moving away? This process takes a long time to move your life somewhere else. But if you read a number of articles that have come out recently are showing you that not only are the wealthy moving, but the middle class people are moving too.
Tom Friedman last week said it wouldn't surprise him if the Chinese were drawing up a list of advanced industrial products for which they will never depend on the United States again. That certainly seems to be the way Huawei is tilting. What do you think they can do without from the U.S. in terms of industrial machinery, materials, you name it?
The one thing that the Chinese have been working so hard to acquire, and thank God we've stopped them, is they don't really have wafer fabs, and they need wafer fabs desperately. And so they're short wafer fabs. They're 15, 20 years behind, and I don't think they can do without those.
What about Taiwan? Isn't that a place where they do a lot of that, though?
Yeah, they do. And so, look, there are 23 million people in Taiwan that are watching the 7.5 million people in Hong Kong every single day. Because Admiral Liu's plan, if you think about Chinese history and what's been written about their plan, is the first island chain is something that they meant to secure 4 or 5 years ago, and that includes Taiwan and Hong Kong. And so the question is, when do they go take Taiwan if they crack down heavily in Hong Kong? And clearly that's on the minds of every single Taiwanese person around the world.
I mean, Hong Kong is a golden goose. Wouldn't they be crazy to start to intervene with the whole world watching the financial center of Hong Kong? Shouldn't they just wait it out until school starts?
But if you're in Hong Kong, your own leader has turned her back on you. Your police have come and beat the living hell out of you. You have no trust in your police. You have no trust in your leadership. This is what happens when these kinds of architectures fall apart. You're not just going to wait out poor leadership and distrust of your police. Like, the people in Hong Kong are fighting this existential battle for their survival over the next 27 years, and they brought that to today.
You think it's dead? It's separate from the extradition bill. They don't believe that it's truly dead?
Well, it's not. So, fundamentally, the way the extradition bill, they say it's dead. It hasn't been formally withdrawn. The way Hong Kong law is today is in 12 days. So they could renew the legislative efforts today. In 12 days from today, it could pass. And so what I think is likely to happen is they replace Carrie Lam at some point in time. The Communist Party does. They bring our Beijing hardliner in and they jam this through. So what's going to happen?
Kyle, I'd love to turn back to sort of the macro view of the world right now, in particular debt levels, something that you and I have been talking about for a very long time, since the crisis. I went back and looked at your 2011 letter from November of 2011, and you wrote then, as it stands today, total credit market debt is 310% of GDP. Again, this is 8 years ago.
Yeah.
We're saddled with the largest accumulation of peacetime debts without any playbook for what happens next. Given the enormity of the debt burdens of Portugal, Ireland, Iceland, Greece, Spain, and others, and at some point the U.S., you said lending schemes designed to lend more into an intractable debt problem are destined to fail miserably. There's no savior large enough with a magical pool of capital to stave off this unfortunate conclusion to the global debt supercycle. We think hard defaults are imminent. It's 8 years later.
Yeah.
We got negative interest rates. Nobody talks about hard defaults.
Yeah.
Were you wrong?
Oh, absolutely. I think.
Wait, absolutely you were wrong or not?
I was wrong. Yeah. Absolutely. When you look at Japan, Japan owns 70% of every ETF listed in Japan. The Bank of Japan owns it. The Bank of Japan has monetized 115% of Japanese debt.
So what'd you get wrong here?
All the central banks of the world will never let a hard default happen. They will keep printing. What did our central bank just teach our entire political edifice in the last 10 years? Deficit spending doesn't matter. And so what's the unintended consequence of central bank balance sheet expansion? So Olli Rehn was in Dallas yesterday at the Dallas Fed. I'm 95% sure you're going to see the Europeans restart QE at the next meeting. This is insane. The Japanese are going to keep going. The Chinese print money like it's a national pastime today. Europe's going to restart QE. They're probably going to have to change the capital key. So you're going to see Greece, Portugal, and Spanish.
We have a
debt
president
go
who's
negative.
pushing for a 100 basis point decline overall from rates for our Fed
rates,
chair.
our rates are going to go to zero whether Trump gets it all in one move or not.
You think so?
Yeah.
Why?
Because we're the only country that has an integer in front of our bond yields. We have 90% of the world's investment grade debt. We actually have a rule of law and we have a decent economy. All the money is going to come here. All the money in the world is coming here.
So dollar new high just continues that pace.
The dollar is going to continue to rip.
Then why doesn't the administration understand that the dollar is driven by more than just rates?
They do. Think about this. Think about the moment that we started seeing yield curve inversion. What was the first thing we saw? We started talking about issuing a century bond. That was our political edifice saying we'd like to see some steepness in the yield curve. We're going to issue a huge amount of 100-year debt to try to find some steepness in the yield curve. The whole yield curve is just going to collapse.
Are you in the recession camp?
Yeah, I mean, look, I believe we're going to see. Look, if Europe's printing negative PMIs, China's growing at the slowest rate it's grown at in 35 years. The U.S. can't magically grow its way through that. So I'm saying that we're going to have a shallow recession potentially in 2020.
So back to this larger idea, and again, we got to wrap up, of that you don't add debt to solve a debt crisis. I guess maybe you do.
You do.
And do you stay in negative rates then? I mean, how do you get out of negative interest rates?
I think that the crisis that this central banking cabal is going to have to deal with. We always talk about the wealth disparity. You know, I was just anecdotally in the donut shop in Dallas that I've taken my kids to for 20 years, and the lady that runs it was crying when I was in there, and she said, "I can't sell enough donuts to pay my new rent. I have to close, and the ballet store next door is closing, and the pet food store next door to them is closing. So the price of everything's gone up. Think about the price of all housing, all rent." Everything except technological deflation has hit us in our worlds. And think about the middle class. They can't afford anything. So the negative consequence, the unintended consequences of central bank printing are it makes the rich even richer, and it makes the middle class stay right where they are, and it makes the poor, they stay poor. And so I think what you're going to see is you're going to see more violent crime. You're going to see crime rates tick up. You're going to see asset prices continue to go up, and people aren't going to be able to afford them. You can't charge more rent without raising salaries, and people can't raise salaries. So I think we're going to get to a point where asset prices go up and we get to stagflation, and that's a problem. But I think rates will stay low.
Kyle, a lot more to talk about here, but we got to wrap it up for now. I know we'll probably see you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Kyle Bass from Heyman Capital.
When we come back, another economic warning sign will tell you how slowing RV sales might be a key recession indicator. Journal did a nice piece on this yesterday. As we go to break, take a look at the worst performing names on the Dow right now. It includes Dow and UNH and Intel. Back in a minute.
ETF Spotlight is sponsored by Invesco QQ.
There are certain things in life we simply don't talk about, and hemorrhoids are, right up there, so to speak. But we should, because there's 8 million people in the UK right now suffering with piles. If you're one of them like I was, you should speak to Xroid. They're the Harley Street specialists in hemorrhoid treatment. It's a new, fast, gentle, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids, with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Consultation and treatment starts from $9.95. Xroid, be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
Make sure you're uni-ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home-from-home comforts, and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of homes.
At first, we were worried about using purple bricks, but since we sold with them, I haven't been able to stop going on about them, have I, dear?
No, love.
I've been telling everyone, family, friends, that confused guy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you haven't really shut up about that.
But seriously, did I tell you about our purple bricks estate agent, Michael?
I met him too. He was nice.
We could talk to him whenever. Anything we asked, he could do it.
That's enough now,
He
dear.
was brilliant, always available to chat on the phone.
Enough, Robert.
I could email him any time of the day or night.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Man, it's been some summer. Feels like the carnival could go on forever. Capture the joy on your new Huawei P30 series, and it really will go on and on from just $19.99 a month with no upfront cost from Carphone Warehouse. Stretch out the long summer days with the hot phone of the moment. The Huawei P30 series, now with up to £100 cash back. Pull a switcheroo at Carphone Warehouse. Offer ends 4th of September. T's and C's and contract apply. Visit website for details.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
As he turned the corner, it hit him. A smell so sweet, orchestral masterpieces could be composed about it. But what could it be? He had to find out. So with his nose leading the way, he wandered towards the paradise. He turned a corner and stopped. What lay before him was the most beautiful sight he could ever have imagined. A new bakery. And to think, he'd never have come across it had he taken the car. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Dow's down 75. Time now for our ETF Spotlight. Today, taking a look at the oil, gas, exploration, and production ETF. That's ticker XOP. It's pulling back after coming off its best day of the month. Really strong day for energy yesterday. XLE also trading lower today after surging yesterday on geopolitical tensions in Saudi Arabia. The energy sector, flat for the year, remains the biggest laggard among the 11 S&P 500 sectors.
Let's get to Sue Herrera, get a news update this morning. Morning, Sue.
Good morning, Carl. Good morning, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Hong Kong's leader announcing the formation of a group to look into complaints about police behavior during recent protests. She spoke at a news conference today.
Important fact-finding study, in addition to a very robust system to investigate and look at the complaints against police over this prolonged period of confrontations and violence.
The unrest in Hong Kong is expected to be a major topic as the foreign ministers of Japan and South Korea meet their Chinese counterparts in Beijing to discuss regional cooperation. The meetings also come amid an escalating trade dispute between Japan and South Korea. Here at home, a Utah businessman paying $1.3 million for an 1894 San Francisco minted silver dime. It occurred during an auction last week. It's one of the 3 most famous coins that were issued by the U.S. Mint. The San Francisco Mint produced only 24 early versions of the coin, and now only 9 are known to still exist. You are up to date. That's the news update this hour. Guys, I'll send it back downtown to you. David?
Okay, thank you, Sue. When we come back right here at the NYSE, well, stocks are down. You can see that after a 3-day winning streak for the Dow and the S&P. We're going to tell you where to find value in this market uncertainty when Squawk on the Street returns.
Through the AT&T network,
this is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Live big and spend less on the brands you adore. And dine by the waterside. Who could want more? Lap up the savings as much as the view with Ted Baker, Hackett, Nike, and Coach too. Lock Fine and Five Guys make it a date. You can shop, meet, and eat every weekday till late. So sit back, unwind, and let style lead the way. And give yourself a different day at Gunwharf Keys. Waterfront Outlet Shopping.
We've created unlimited data plans for your business because 1 minute you're the receptionist.
Hello, how can I help?
The logistics manager.
Okay, lift at your end. That's it now, to me.
The new business consultant.
Will do. I'll pop over and give you a quote.
And you've still got to make the tea. Your business doesn't have limits, so why should your data allowance? New unlimited data plans from Vodafone Business. The future is exciting. Ready?
Max download upload speed apply to data. Coverage may vary. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
What's better than being at one with nature? How about being at two with nature? Get a 2-for-1 companion voucher valid for 2 years when you spend £10,000 each year on the British Airways American Express Premium Plus card. Probably best not to go for the silent retreat then. Search VA Amex to find out more. Representative 76% APR variable. Annual fee applies. Applicants must be 18 years or older. Subject to approval. Terms, taxes, fees and carrier charges apply.
Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Stocks moving lower this morning, putting through that 3-day win streak for the Dow and the S&P in jeopardy. Joining us to discuss what to do next, Nuveen Chief Investment Strategist Brian Nick. And also joining us is Wells Fargo Asset Management President and Chief Investment Officer Kirk Hartman. Welcome to you both. So Brian, what do you do after we've had this tremendous volatility over the last week and still have the trade and monetary policy overhangs?
So just like any roller coaster, we think this one's going to end up basically where it started. So our target for the end of the year for the S&P is basically about where it is now, in the 2,800, 2,900 range. I think you're going to see more trade-related volatility. I think investors should assume that obviously we're going to have the September 1st tariffs go into effect. Until further notice, assume that the December 15th tariffs will also go into effect, and we could potentially escalate from there. So I wouldn't be, discounting the idea that we're not going to see escalation just because we're approaching next year's election.
But can the Fed make it all better?
We don't think so. It's not clear the Fed could have to surprise people with a mid sort of meeting rate cut or 50 or 75 basis point. I just don't think we're going to hear that from Jay Powell this week. I don't think we're going to get that from the Fed. If they just do their orderly 25 basis point per meeting cut, that's basically, just what's expected, and therefore not going to be a huge boost, I think, to the equity markets, and not going to be a huge boost to the economy either, where the consumer is not really overly leveraged and doesn't really need these rate cuts at the moment.
Kirk, what are you telling your clients?
Well, I think you want to look for non-correlated assets. What's interesting here is I think if you try to trade this market, it's an opportunity to lose money. I think you want to look through the next 2 months. I think you're going to see a lot more volatility until the trade dispute settles down. And I think what you want to do is you want to say, I want to own stocks towards the end of the year, but I wouldn't be trading this market here.
Kirk, as somebody who has experience in fixed income, I know obviously you oversee all asset classes now. Our last guest, Kyle Bass, was talking about the fact that he thinks we could see 0% interest rates as money continues to flow over here to try and get some sort of a return. Where are you on that argument?
Well, I think the bond market's gotten a bit ahead of itself. The Fed funds futures market looks like 100 basis points lower in the 1% range, and the market wants the 2-year at 50 basis points. I don't think that's going to happen. To your earlier guest point, I think 25 basis points is probably expectation, maybe another cut by the end of the year, but I think the bond market's gotten ahead of itself.
What would happen to stocks, Brian, if in that kind of environment, if we saw rates go lower and lower and lower all the way to zero?
I think it depends why rates are going lower. If they're going lower because we're continuing to see bad economic data, the stock market's going to follow it down. If we see central banks coming in with a bazooka, and that's been the rumored ECB measure that we're going to see in September, we could see rates go temporarily lower because there's a sense that they can actually put their boot on the end of the yield curve in Europe, and that could cause U.S. rates to fall down with them, but that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for the equity markets here in the U.S.
So, Kirk, if bonds are ahead of themselves, does that mean equities look like a better bet right now?
Well, the yield on equities is better than the 10-year Treasury and the S&P 500. So I think that equities, in terms of relative value, look pretty good. But again, I wouldn't look for, trading this. But I think towards the end of the year, I think it's possible once we get through all this, which we will, I think the administration will sign some kind of deal. I think it's possible that equities could start to move up towards the end of the year.
And yet, growth stocks still seem to be in favor over the higher dividend yielding sort of value stocks, Brian. So how do you play that strategy given we are seeing lower and lower yields?
Yeah, we're trying to look for the overlap there. We're trying to stay defensive. Obviously, anything with the yield is going to get a pretty strong bid at the moment. We're also looking for undervalued growth. It's hard to find that these days with growth so low. You tend to see growth stocks get bid up. Tech's having a fantastic year. One area that we like that hasn't done as well is healthcare. That's gotten beaten up for the political announcements from some of the candidates. There's been a sense that there's risk around healthcare. We don't think that that's as huge a risk heading into next year. And that's one area where it's defensive and also growthy, and that could be an outperformer in the second half of the year.
Kirk Hartman, Brian Nick, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As investors fear a looming recession, or at least the possibility of it, some are looking to the road for a better read on the economy. Our Frank Holland joins us now with a look at RV sales as an economic indicator. Frank.
Well, David, we're 14 months into the downturn in RV sales, with June of last year marking the start of the decline. Sales of towables, they've fallen 20%. Motorhomes, 23% year to date, really ramping up the fears that this is yet another sign a recession is coming. So just to keep this in historical perspective, there have been 5 of these official RV sales downturns since 1981, according to Thomson Research Group. Only 2, both tied for the longest, at 36 months, have actually preceded recessions. One before the early 90s recession, one before the Great Recession. Since 2009, RV sales have increased when the rates on the 10-year Treasury note decrease. But over the past year, and especially the last 6 months, that trend's come to an abrupt halt. The 10-year falling by 25% in the first half of the year, while overall RV shipments have also fallen by 20%. Concerning trends, but certainly not the whole story. Tariffs have raised the input costs for RVs and led to price increases for manufacturers, including industry leader Thor and Winnebago, and also put a lot of pressure on manufacturers of components like Lippert Components. There's also been a substantial expansion in the RV rental market. It's estimated to have grown more than 45% since 2009. So there's a number of headwinds that are impacting RV sales. So a possible warning of a recession, but it's an indicator that may really be skewed by a number of external factors. Back over to you.
Fascinating anecdotal work. Thanks, Frank. Frank Holland on RVs today. As we go to break, take a look at Beyond Meat. It's up after getting an upgrade at JP Morgan. They go to overweight from neutral. Still up more than 500% from the IPO, but obviously down double digits in the past month. Dow's down 81. Let's get to Kate Rogers in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with a look at what's ahead on Squawk on the Street. Kate?
Hey, Carl. Well, we're here at Domino's massive new innovation garage, where the company's testing out everything from these e-bikes for delivery to unmanned driverless robot for delivery. We're going to tell you all about it coming up after the break on Squawk on the Street.
Who says being cheap is a good thing?
There are certain things in life we simply don't talk about. And hemorrhoids are, right up there, so to speak. But we should, because there's 8 million people in the UK right now suffering with piles. If you're one of them, like I was, you should speak to Xroid. They're the Harley Street specialists in hemorrhoid treatment. It's a new, fast, gentle, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids, with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Consultation and treatment starts from $9.95. Xroid, be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
With Rapid Insurance on Vodafone Business, we'll get a replacement phone to you within 4 hours. So if you should...
Oh, no.
Or even... Just get in touch and we'll...
Your replacement phone, sir?
Your phone replaced within 4 hours with our Rapid Insurance. Available on our new and limited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone Business.
Max download, upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Unlimited and rapid terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Could point to an even bigger rebound ahead, says one top money manager. Find out more on tradingnation.cnbc.com. More Squawk on the Street is coming up.
You know that tech stock we talked about?
As he turned the corner, it hit him. A smell so sweet, orchestral masterpieces could be composed about it. But what could it be? He had to find out. So with his nose leading the way, he wandered towards the paradise. He turned a corner and stopped. What lay before him was the most beautiful sight he could ever have imagined. A new bakery. And to think, he'd never have come across it had he taken the car. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
If your old faithful fridge freezer is broken or on the blink again, relax.
At AO, we have a huge range jam-packed with the latest technology to keep your weekly favourites fresher than ever. Plus, there's great deals on top brands like Haier, Bosch and Beko with finance options available. AO.com, the online electrical store. AO, let's go! Credit is subject to status, must be over 18. AO Retail Limited is a broker and not a lender. Credit is provided by Secure Trust Bank PLC, trading as V12 Retail Finance.
Let's send it over to the CME Group in Chicago. Rick Santelli with the Santelli Exchange. Morning, Rick.
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to welcome my guest of Morgan Stanley Investment Management, Brian Weinstein. Brian, let's get right into it. News of the day that seems to move markets. China might add more stimulus. Germany's talking about, for the first time, maybe not so much a surplus in their budget, but maybe writing some big checks, maybe 50 billion euros. Our Federal Reserve talking about lowering rates, and the EU in general. September 12th supposed to be a bazooka-type meeting. Does this fiscal and monetary stimulus have a price, considering we've been using it a lot more than organic growth has been bubbling up?
Yeah, Rick, I think it has a price. When you look at global yields and look at how much they've fallen, I think the market is skeptical that all of this can come together in time to get enough organic growth to keep things going in the right direction. That a price might be confidence in the system.
You know, many stock markets in the past, like the NASDAQ, almost doubled 5 months before it crashed. What are investors to do if all of that stimulus is probably going to help stock prices, but maybe there's questions in the macro picture?
I think you see it in the price action. People are buying safe havens, and equities have done fine, right? So the big move this year has been duration. Safe assets have done really, really well. So I think investors are putting money in places where, in case they're wrong, they can get gains, and the U.S. Treasury market has been a big beneficiary.
You know, when I look at the corporate arena, for example, the investment grade, the LQD is virtually at all-time highs. The spreads in the securities markets are very tight on investment grade. Why are investors so easily moving into these areas without increased compensation, in your opinion?
I think it's all part of a grab for yield, and the fact that U.S. growth, where LQD is U.S. companies, the U.S. growth has been okay. So if you can't find it away from home, you go to the U.S. market, you find safe assets, and we don't expect corporate default rates to go up a lot. So maybe LQD is a good place to get some extra yield.
Do you suspect that Jay Powell and company are going to continue the easing, or do you think that was a one-off and recent data points will hamper a longer-term easing cycle beginning in the near future?
We think they'll keep easing. I don't know if they can get ahead of the curve. I'm not sure if the data is where they need it to be to really move as aggressively as the market wants. But make no mistake about it, this is the beginning of a number of eases. I think it's a matter of how far they go and how quickly. If they fall behind the market, the long end will rally more.
You know, it's so easy in a knee-jerk to say, inverted curve, everything's going to be recession at some point in the future. When I look at 2s to 10s curve, putting the 3-month aside, it definitely is getting flat. What do you think the implications are if it doesn't really have major inversions over a longer period of time?
I think the implications are what you said earlier, which is there's just not a big risk to growth and inflation. So the question is, how long can we muddle through? I don't think we can do it forever, but the implications are low growth, grab for yields, and if growth stays positive or at least a little bit above zero, a lot of these assets can do very well.
You know, there's always a lot of debate as to why investors seem so enamored during questionable times with gold. Doesn't the fact that interest rates are so low and gold is a sterile commodity, it has negative carry, isn't that a large part of the reason as well?
Sure. I mean, when you're dealing with zero yields...
Brian, we have breaking news, Brian. We have breaking news. I'm going to have to go. Thank you for joining me today. Carl, what's going on?
Rick, we're getting some news on the Volcker rule this morning. Dominic Chu has more on that. Dom?
All right, so Carl, what we have right now is the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, now approving some rule changes to the Volcker rule that will clarify rules on what banks can and cannot do with regard to using their own money for investing purposes. In this case here, the FDIC has approved some changes that will allow banks to use their own capital to facilitate client trades, otherwise known as principal trading or market-making activities. It will look to allow some of those trades to actually happen. Another version of this was already signed off on by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency earlier this morning. 2 agencies there, 5 in total, have to approve these particular changes to happen. The Federal Reserve, the SEC, and then also what's happening with the CFTC. Those 3 agencies are still yet to sign off on this, but in total, David, this could be a big change in the way that banks are allowed to actually use their own money to take positions on behalf of clients and to facilitate client transactions. We'll keep an eye on the other developments here, but that's the latest for now. David, back over to you guys.
Yeah, they had been complaining, Dom, for some time that it was sort of unclear to them, a bit subjective and unclear overall, the rule that was preventing them from doing so. Interesting, though, no real reaction in the share prices. You might expect that as we get closer to this rule change taking place, the Goldman Sachs, for example, shares might go a bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the interesting point here. First of all, these changes have been talked about for, at this point, years. This idea that they could be looking to change the Volcker rule. You wonder whether or not a lot of the reaction that's been taking place in the bank stocks going over the course of the past 6 to 9 months has already incorporated some of this expectation. I mean, President Trump's administration has been taking active steps to actually loosen up some of these banking regulations. So perhaps a little unclear even for investors right now how much has already been expected for this move. I'm sure as the Fed, the CFTC, and SEC do their own, we could see perhaps a bit of a movement in those bank stocks, David.
Well, do we know what the scope of actually the banned trading is? I mean, how much is it? How substantial is this of a change from the 2013 law?
So
do we know that yet?
Yes. So it will clarify some of the points on trades that are held short term. With regard to, say less than 60 days. Some of those particular moves there are meant in some ways to help clients facilitate their transactions with the bank. Say a Goldman Sachs says, we will buy your shares from you principally rather than find a buyer for you on an agency basis. So some of those types of trades are the ones that are going to be more affected by this particular rule change. Sarah, to your point there.
All right, Dom, well, we'll keep a close eye on it. For now, the inverted yield curve or lower rates seem to be having more of an impact on those shares than this potential positive for trading. Dom Chu back at HQ. We'll be right back.
Fidelity is redefining value.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Man, it's been some summer. Feels like the carnival could go on forever. Capture the joy on your new Huawei P30 series, and it really will go on and on from just $19.99 a month with no upfront cost from Carphone Warehouse. Stretch out the long summer days with the hot phone of the moment. The Huawei P30 series, now with up to £100 cash back. Pull a switcheroo at Carphone Warehouse. Offer ends 4th of September. T's and C's and contract apply. Visit website for details.
As he turned the corner, it hit him. A smell so sweet, orchestral masterpieces could be composed about it. But what could it be? He had to find out. So with his nose leading the way, he wandered towards the paradise. He turned a corner and stopped. What lay before him was the most beautiful sight he could ever have imagined. A new bakery. And to think, he'd never have come across it had he taken the car. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The biggest cat in the world was longer than a cricket bat. Think that's big? Tonight, the Euro Millions jackpot is a gigantic £82 million. 82 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
If your old faithful fridge freezer is broken or on the blink again, relax. At AO, we have a huge range jam-packed with the latest technology to keep your weekly favourites fresher than ever. Plus, there's great deals on top brands like Hisense, LG and Whirlpool, with finance options available. AO.com, the online electrical store. AO! Let's go! Credit is subject to status. Must be over 18. AO Retail Limited is a broker and not a lender. Credit is provided by Secure Trust Bank PLC, trading as V12 Retail.